So Dave, welcome back. It's been well, I did actually, for people that don't know, I actually got to finally meet Dave in person, and that actually wasn't that long ago. So that was really cool. But it's been 4 years since you've been on the show. For those that
Really?
don't know, has it? Well, hang on. It's been 4 years since your awakening interview, but you did come on another time, didn't you? Well, you called in to talk about the Mandela effect, maybe?
Yeah, that's right. I did call in once. Yeah.
Yeah, you called in once. I was thinking that. But the last time you were on as a guest for a whole show, that was 4 years ago. It was in
Yeah.
2019 at some point.
Wow.
Yeah. So maybe even coming up on 5 years, and time has just flown by.
And
Obviously,
we
with
and
what
we met.
started.
We met here.
Yeah. It was fabulous. And for those that don't know, Dave gave a presentation. And part of that presentation, he brought up the Mandela effect, which obviously is very interesting to me. And I always love when more and more people start to talk about this topic. So we are going to discuss a lot of Dave's takes on the Mandela effect today. We'll probably rewind a little bit though, and kind of maybe go back and we could probably start with like your kind of when was your kind of when it's such a process, but when do you think your awakening journey kind of started? Like, what was a few of the first things you started questioning about the world? And then let's kind of go forward to when you first heard of the Mandela effect, and we'll get into it.
Right. Well, my first sort of awakening was same as most people, really, 9/11. But it wasn't straight away. It was about three or 4 years later when I was helping my daughter with her physics homework, and all of a sudden, light bulb went off, and I started researching and finding out that 9/11 was an inside job. And that kind of led me to ask the question, well, who's behind it then? If it wasn't, Muslims with box cutters. And that led me to the Project for the New American Century. And um, those people led me to the New World Order, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and, that looking at the New World Order made me look at the monetary system, and that led me to the legal system and then to the healthcare system, and all these systems that our lives are built around. I realize they're all connected, they're all fake, essentially, kind of fake versions of what we think they are. Just like the shape of the earth is a fake version of what it really is. Um, so
They're really presenting us a completely fabricated reality, like as far as all their
absolutely.
systems and what they show for history, cosmology, the money system, the medical, which we'll try and stay away from today. I mean, it just goes on and on. Everywhere you look, it turns out to be complete fabrications.
And I think I know why. Now I've kind of started to figure out why they've created an entire fantasy world around us. Um, it's starting to make sense now. Um, so yeah, I got into the Mandela effect while I was looking at the flat Earth, and somebody mentioned this idea, um, and I realized that I was one of those people who remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison. I remember that.
Hmm.
Um, and then, he came out of prison and became president. I remember that now. I thought, I'm sure he died. I'm sure he died. Um, and then I found out about this Mandela effect thing. Um, and I
What
think
year was this? Would you say? Because for me, it was like you said, flat Earth, and you heard about Mandela effect. These things hit me very close at the same time. So it was like the summer of 2014, I had started looking into flat Earth. Obviously, as you know, there wasn't a lot of content out there yet. But then at like the end of 2014, early 2015, I heard of the Nelson Mandela thing and the Berenstain Bears. And as insignificant as people might think, the Berenstain Bears changed to Berenstain. I mean, that was enough for me to realize, okay, I kind of understand the concept of what's going on here. And then, of course, there's bigger things like history and geography, which came a few months later for me, and I was just completely mind blown.
well, for me, I think it was late 2015. But I didn't really regard it very much. I mean,
Yeah,
Berenstein, or again, that's American. We never got
yeah.
we never knew it. And to my mind, I think that was a double whammy, because it shouldn't it be Bernstein rather than Berenstein?
I remember Berenstein. I've seen people write it often though without that second E. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. But yeah, I wrote it off. I thought yeah, I must have misremembered the the Mandela thing. And the other one was, I think it was before Mandela, um Star Trek. Because I remember Captain Kirk saying, "Beam me up, Scotty." He never ever
Yeah,
said that. He never said that. I'm like,
yeah.
but yeah, I got that one. I thought, well, maybe I misremembered again. But it wasn't until I saw um, C3PO with a silver leg.
He looks so ridiculous, man. Especially in the Ewok village when he's up in the chariot and he's got this silver leg now. I
Yeah.
mean, the idea that we all missed that is just preposterous.
I mean,
Um,
when they brought the prequel out, they had or was it one of the prequels, where they had C3PO with a red leg. And that was shocking. It was like, oh,
Red
he
arm, red arm.
oh, was it arm or something? Yeah, it was like, that's shocking. He's got a different arm, and it's obviously not part. So if we knew that he had a silver leg, it wouldn't be so shocking having a different part on him. So um yeah, that was the one for me. I was like, I absolutely know, because I was such a Star Wars fan, that I even made a fancy dress costume, a C3PO fancy dress costume. So I poured over those pictures for hours and hours and hours. There was no way he had a silver leg in my universe. So that was the one that got me. And then I found Snow White and all the others. And yeah, it was very cool, very interesting. But again, I had to park that because there were more pressing matters coming along, other research I was looking into. So it just had a gee whiz factor. But
Mhm.
as I started looking further into the nature of this reality, now I can see that there's this Mandela effect. Has Not only is it real, but it's showing us something about the nature of this reality. Um, you just played the X Files with was it Mulder saying, yes, it's we're passing into different universes and things like that. No, I don't think we are. I think there is one universe, right?
I
One
agree.
reality,
I
and
agree.
what's happening is different probabilities are being brought into our reality, and those probabilities affect the past, the future, and the present. So but we can get into that in more detail if you want to.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And I am a one reality guy. Everybody that watches my channel a lot knows that about me when we talk about theories. And of course, we're speculating about theories of the cause of the Mandela effect. But the Mandela effect, and I totally understand why you parked it on the shelf for a while, and a lot of people do. Unfortunately, a lot of people completely triggered by it and won't even go there at all. That's a little different than parking it on the shelf for a little bit. But then when you start to dig into it, what you tend to see is it's a lot more than just Snow White and Mr. Rogers and C3PO. It's actually like the deepest thing ever because we're talking about the underlying aspect of how reality functions. And if the Mandela effect is real, which I know the Mandela effect is real, that means that what we thought were possible with physical matter and the fabric of time are also completely out the window because we're seeing things retroactively change. If things could change instantaneously, like if my Star Wars movies could change, which they did, I had three different hard copy versions. Okay,
Hmm.
checked them when the C3PO thing went down, or at least when I became aware of it. You know, and there he was with the silver leg. So if physical matter in my house can instantaneously change, that would be one thing. But it's not even instantaneous change. It's like a backwards through reality all the way forward change. That's some deep stuff. And then when you start to look more and more at the Mandela effect, you realize It's not just products and media. That'd be enough for me. But there's supernatural changes, for the lack of a better term, to all the Bibles in the world, human anatomical changes, geographical changes to where the land masses of the earth are positioned.
Mhm.
And even with your first memory of Nelson Mandela dying in prison, well, he's not the only person that people remember being dead. I totally remember Louis Anderson, the comedian, being dead like over 20, 25 years ago. Um, so we're talking about people coming back from the dead, and but retroactively, and also people that live their daily lives, their last names are changing, like Jimmy Savile, Joel Osteen, right? We could do a list of names, so deep because Dan Aykroyd, the name of his spelling's changed. So many of these people. So this is a really, really deep topic, and it's interesting too because when you bring up the deeper ones to people, a lot of them will just they don't want to talk about it at all, and then they want to keep going back to, well, who cares if the Monopoly Man has a monocle or not?
Yeah, so what I think we're seeing really are the ripples. Yeah, so something was changed, and we're seeing the ripples of that change. So, something major has changed, for whatever reason. And, say because of that change, one guy didn't show up for work, the next day. And so he didn't have his input on, the marketing meeting for, I don't know, Captain Crunch or whatever. And so the name, it didn't, came about because he wasn't there. And so now there's that little change, because of the main change. I, I don't know, I can't prove it, but I think one of the major things that created a big change was 9/11. Was this focus for everybody in the world essentially on this one
Mm-hmm.
event, right? Created a separate timeline going forward, because before then, I think most of us had a view of the future. We had this view of the future of being an amazing place with all this amazing technology and stuff. And I think we got skewed into a different
So
reality.
like, so like, as big as the 9/11 thing was, and as much as the media and everything was saturated with it, you think they hit us so hard with that it like shifted our consciousness basically completely.
Right. I hate this phrase about shifting consciousness and raising consciousness, because you ask somebody what it means, and most people don't really understand what that actually means. Um,
Hmm.
I was just thinking about that phrase yesterday. Um, um, Let me go back a second, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in 1993, I heard a song that was amazing, and I couldn't, I don't know what it was about. It was called Re-Evolution by the Shaman. Okay. And it was this weird guy speaking words I had no idea what he was talking about. And it was just, this guy speaking over music, right? For some reason, I memorized every word of what he was saying. And to this day, this was what, 30 years on, I can still remember every word of that song. Um, but what I found was when I was waking up, um, I was trying to figure something out, and I'm walking down the street in New York, and I'm trying to work out what I've just learned. And I heard the words of this song in my head, and it explained what it was I was trying to figure out. Um, Amazing. And again, a week ago, I'm working on
Yeah.
something else on an even higher level than I learned before. And again, this same track, the same words, explained what I was thinking about. I was trying to work out. So the strange voice was Terence McKenna. I don't know if you know who Terence McKenna is.
Yeah.
Um,
I've heard him.
so raising consciousness, and he has a different uh, sort of view on it, from the psychoactive drug, point of view. He says when you're in, having these psychoactive experiences, there is so much information and so on such different levels, right? That you can only understand what you have cultural or experiential context for. There's stuff that's coming at you, but you cannot grasp it because you don't have the context for it. Yeah. And the context we have in this life is that we can have something, a metaphor for it. Okay. So we would say, oh, it was like this, or it seemed very much like that. Unless we have a metaphor for it, we can't understand it. We can't conceptualize it. But as you learn more about this world, then your ability to absorb new concepts increases.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
so these people talk about raising consciousness and stuff. It's as simple as understanding something new. So
Yeah.
when you learned about the flat Earth, your consciousness raised because now once you know about the flat Earth, you can understand the motivations of NASA, of the system. Why are they telling us all this stuff? Your consciousness has risen because now you can understand more about stuff that you've seen for all your life. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, of course it makes sense.
Yeah, so yes, this raising consciousness is something an open-minded person does all the time. Yeah. It's not some mystical thing or anything. It's simply
Yeah.
being open to new experiences and absorbing those experiences so that,
And then starting to understand more what this place
yes,
is as you
you
start
just
to
open
understand
up
more
a
and
bit
more,
more.
and as you start to tap into abilities more and more that we've always had.
Exactly. But if you don't have the context for those abilities, then
Yeah.
you can't grasp them. They're invisible to you.
Yeah. That's why I think some of the Mandela effect, it didn't all like, and we'll get into what we speculate the sources might be of the Mandela effect, the updates, and all that. But that's why I think, in my opinion, we're not hit with all the changes at once. It's like this incremental process, and it's kind of like getting us to understand this realm more. And part of that process we're talking about.
Well, I think the Mandela effect as such has always been happening. It's always been happening, right?
Yeah.
But now our consciousness is raised to the point where we can see it now. We understand more about the world. We're now all connected. So that moment where I looked and said, I'm sure that Nelson Mandela died in prison. Now we connect with other people around the world who go, yeah, you know what? I remember that too. So now it's real, it's a real thing. But before we're all connected in this way, it just that idea just died in your head that, oh, I must have just misremembered it. Yeah. So I think it's always been happening. We're just now just starting to become aware of it, because our consciousness level has risen to the point where we can accept a new concept like somehow time is changing. And
Hmm.
the reason I think time is changing is that time has never been this rigid, progression of cause and effect that we've been sort of educated to believe.
Yeah, so again, reality's functioning probably as it's always functioned. Maybe things have accelerated some, if from an event like a 9/11 or whatever. But again, like we're just starting to understand more and more what's been happening right under our noses the entire time.
Right. And if
This
you,
is why, if you notice when the Mandela effect gets discussed, it's clever the way that they gatekeep it. I want to get your take on this. So a lot of people that won't look at the topic seriously at all, the farthest they'll go is they'll read a couple of these articles, and I consider them all disinfo articles, and they're endless, they're daily. I get Google alerts for them, I read them, not all of them, but I look through them and see if there's anything to pick apart. And what they'll always do is they'll present like 40 Mandela effects or something, right? And for the most part, they are legit changes, but they never get past the products and brands. If they don't come right out and call it false memory, they leave you in the state of thinking that companies are just changing things. But what's really, I think, should be a red flag to anybody that's never taken this topic seriously, and people know I talk about it all the time, is like you guys are very well aware that we have things like this, Dave. This is what we call residue, physical residual evidence of the way that things used to be. It's
Yeah.
not just a memory game. I have here a 12-inch C3PO. This came out in 1997. This is 2 years before the prequels even came out. It's clearly representing original trilogy, okay? And it's so detailed that the wires on the stomach are individually painted and colored.
Mm.
But of course, he has two gold legs.
Yeah.
Why would this even exist if it's never been a thing? I keep showing that grocery stores and their POS systems, you can buy products that have allegedly never existed, and we're all just crazy. Haas avocados, multiple grocers, Walmart, and Kroger's think they're selling Haas avocados, but they've always been Haas now. The Food Lion next to me, and a few other several, like 4 other grocery stores I just showed this week, all think they're still selling a spice called turmeric, which is now turmeric. Nobody wants to talk about the physical residual evidence we have. And this is another reason, Dave, why I'm a one reality guy. I
Mm.
don't think it's multiple timelines, multiple universes. And to me, the multiple universes and all that, that's more to take us away from ourselves, like the multiverse that mainstream science pushes when they push their heliocentric bullshit. What do you think about that?
Sure. Absolutely. I personally think that independent of what's happening out here, we all have our own personal recording of our universe that we keep. A personal, our personal take, our personal perspective on the universe, and that recording is independent of what happens out here. Yeah. So when out there changes, our recording doesn't. And yeah, there are some people who maybe aren't really that interested in Star Wars, for instance. So what color C3PO's leg is, they don't care. They've never
Yeah.
considered it.
But the beautiful thing is, this affects like every category of everything. So whether you're into movies or music or art or geography or something, there's Mandela effects for you. And again, I'm a one reality guy for another reason. These people are all affected. I prove it all the time. I mean, everybody's affected by a slew of changes.
Absolutely.
Not all the exact same ones as everybody, but there's a slew of them that you can hit anybody with.
There'll always be one that will get somebody that will go, bloody no, I know that's not the truth. Yeah. So I did a video recently from one of my talks, and it was called How the Most High Created the Universe. And in it, I show my perspective on how a singular intelligence, singular consciousness that is all there is, right, would go about creating a universe. And he'd do it simply by exploring himself, exploring existence, right? So I show basically how he goes up the different dimensions and does that essentially just by thinking of, okay, what is the most interesting concept for a singular being who is all there is, right? Well, that concept will be other, something else other than him. So he could symbolize himself as a point and then symbolize other as another point, right? But that point has necessarily got to be apart, away from, himself. So now we've got the idea of two-dimensional space, or at least one-dimensional when you think about a line, between the two, right? But then you can think of, that this singular being could think of that other being up here or down here or any sort of anywhere it can be that distance away. Well, that's an idea of a circle, right? Right. So now he can imagine this other being, all the way around him. But now he can think, well, oh, I wonder what it looks like from the other's perspective. Well, now you can draw a circle around that as, where all the possible places, right, the one can be from the other. So now you've got two circles interacting and sort of intersecting, right? But essentially, if you keep doing this process of exploring, you end up with this idea of the flower of life. Right? And in that flower of life is all two-dimensional geometry. Right? So the whole, all two-dimensional geometry is embedded in this picture. Right? But also all three-dimensional geometry is in there. So you get this impression like a two-dimensional projection of a three-dimensional object. Right? So you get a cube in there. Yeah, you've got a square, but you've also got a cube represented in there. So now you've got this idea of 3 dimensions, right? The point is, this is a thought-based universe. So now you've got this idea of 3 dimensions, right? A 3-dimensional playground, as it were. I extend it to the 4th dimension, right? So what's the 4th dimension? So all of the dimensions are, okay, you start off with a line, that's 1 dimension, right? Well, you can actually, go to another dimension, which is, so length and width. And then you can add the 3rd dimension, height, right? So what would be the 4th dimension? Because there's no other direction you can go to make a 4th dimension. Right, well, we can figure out what the 4th dimension is by remembering that at every level of this universe, it's self-similar. It's the same thing at every level, okay? So if you think of a cube, a 3D cube, right? And you cut it in half and look at where you've cut, yeah? So 90 degrees, look at where you've cut, you get a square, okay? That's a cross-section of a cube, right? So you get the square and you cut it in half and look at its cross-section, you get a line, right? So you look at a line, you cut it in half, look at its cross-section, you get a point. So a line is a whole stack of points all merged together into one thing, okay? And a plane, a surface, is a whole bunch of lines all merged together into one thing. And a cube is a bunch of squares, right? Flat squares, all merged together, a stack of them, all merged together into one thing. So the 4th dimension must be a whole bunch of these 3-dimensional objects merged together into one thing. So what would that look like? Well, I think it is, what 4th dimension is changeability, change, time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't get an instantaneous object like a chair. Let's imagine a chair. A chair just doesn't pop into being like that. Right. So we interact with a 3-dimensional slice of that chair. So that chair at a very particular point in time. But that chair started off as a flash of light, which got absorbed by a leaf, which helped grow a tree. And that tree was cut down and turned into lumber. And then somebody had an idea of making a chair and turned that lumber into a chair. But that's not the whole story, because eventually that chair will break or whatever, and it'll end up in landfill where it breaks down into liquid, right? And that liquid breaks down into a gas, and that gas might ignite and turn into light again. So that whole process is the chair, right? So it's a stack of events all merge into one object, which is something we can't imagine, which is the 4th dimension. And we only interact with slices of that chair. Does that make sense? It's really sort of
well, it does make sense, but we don't only interact with that. Now we're seeing that we've been interacting with the 4th dimension, and we're recognizing it now with things popping into reality, like you said this chick didn't just pop into reality, but I would argue that, things do pop into reality now. In fact, I saw a tree pop into reality in front of my friend Steffi's house that was never there. Totally
Yes.
was not there. Then all of a sudden it's part of reality, interwoven into the past. And then after me talking about it, this tree even disappeared from reality again.
But that,
Now it's
that's
never been there.
that's slightly different, right? Because it's not about it popping into reality. Yeah, when you saw it, right, because you didn't just look
Yeah.
at it and then all of a sudden it was there, right? You sort of went away and came back and, oh, what's that tree doing there? Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
that is a change made in the past, so that that tree was there, and then it changed again. But this pen didn't just pop into reality when I wanted it. Yeah. There is a history to this pen, right? And the
Yeah.
history goes into the future with this pen. But we don't have a metaphor right now for creating pens out of thin air. If we did, then that would become possible in this reality. Right? It's all about metaphors um, because we're here for a reason. We're here for a reason. Right? If you go back into the Old Testament, um, Adam was created as, you know, um, in the image of the Most High, right? All the animals in this world are here to do a job. Their job is to keep this world running. Okay. So I use the example of lions and antelope, right? Lions don't eat antelope just because they like antelope meat. Their job is to keep the antelope population, at optimum, efficiency, so that the antelope can keep the savannah nice and clean and whatever. And if there were too many antelope, they'd start destroying the savannah. So the lion population grows to take down the antelope population. So the earth is always perfect. And all the animals, all the way up and down the animal kingdom, are all doing a job to keep this earth ticking over. We're the only ones who don't have a job here. Our job is to experience this place, right?
Hmm.
Experience everything there is to experience. And to that end, I believe we have the power to shape our experience any way we want it to be. And that is, I think, is the big secret that they're trying to hide. This is why they've created this whole fantasy world around us, right? To
Yeah.
stop us remembering that we can change this world in a heartbeat if we wanted to. But we've been poisoned, not only physically but mentally as well, so that we don't understand that we can do this, right? So as I said, he created a fourth dimension as well. Now I had this experience. I call them cannabis journeys. So
Oh, good. Let's hear it. Yeah, let's hear it.
drugs don't usually affect me, right? Usually, but cannabis does. And I've had 7 or 8 cannabis journeys now where I take this stuff and it will teach me things, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things it taught me, I had a little bit too much cannabis oil once. Okay, just a bit too much. And and what happened was I felt myself being pushed through reality into a different world. And that world was the wireframe version of this world. Okay, so
The
like when
what? The
you
wire flame? Is that what you said? What does that
wireframe,
mean?
wireframe. So
Wire frame.
yeah, when you create a 3D, 3D object with a, 3ds Max or something, you create a 3D object, you create the wireframe version, and then you render it with a solid surface. Yeah. But underneath that is, a sort of mathematical wireframed image of that three-dimensional object. So, if I was looking at a table in front of me, I was breaking through into another world. I could see the table, but it was just a wireframe version of that table. And
I get
I,
what you mean.
so I was seeing essentially this place, which was a where everything was prototyped.
It's
So
like it's like the reality that we've been creating the whole time, but you saw like the bare bones version of it before we made it more complete.
yes. So again, this is my level of consciousness at the time interpreting what I was seeing. Now, at the time, I didn't get it. I didn't get it because my level of consciousness wasn't up there to conceptualize what I was seeing. All I saw was just like what I called at the time a cartoon version of the world. Yeah. But as my consciousness rose, I saw it as okay, it was the prototype world there. Okay. Um, so the idea that's now with me is that whatever is created in that fourth dimension will appear
Hmm.
here at some point. So if you created something new, like I don't know, an apple that was half red and half green, okay, if you defined it well enough in the fourth dimension, it will appear at some point. It will
So,
come into pass. Yeah.
do you think that likely you're going to learn and others the ability when you can tap into that and actually create something in that manner? And do you think not only is it possible, do you think we need large masses of people focusing on it, like a group
No,
type thing?
we're already doing it. We're already doing it. Yeah. Um, right. So we have two hemispheres in our brain. Okay. The right and the left. Right. Now, the left-hand side is what keeps us grounded in this world, right? It's what our senses are connected to. So our senses look out this world. The left-hand side of our brain makes sense. It takes in all this information, looks for dangers, it looks for avenues for pleasure. It manages how we live in this 3D concrete world, right?
That's why
Now,
some people that, although they're very intelligent, they can get through many deceptions and psyops and things. If they're too left-brained only, they can't see the Mandela effect, no
they
matter what,
they
it seems.
can't see because again on the left hand side it's about analysis, logic, yeah, science, that sort of thing, right? So if you're stuck in the left brain, you can't see anything that defies logic and science and all that, right? No, it's
Oh,
that's
exactly.
too no, that's out of it. That's supernatural. Let's not look there. Yeah. The right hand side of
Yep.
our brain isn't rooted in the third dimension. It's rooted in the fourth dimension, right? And it's connected to the only way I can describe it is spiritual senses. So, what are spiritual senses? Well, they're the senses that their spiritual eyes are the eyes you see with when you imagine your mother right now, right? Imagine your mother. You can see her face, can't you? Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, your spiritual eyes. You're not seeing her with the physical ones. You're looking at a computer right now, right? Your spiritual ears are the ears you hear with when you imagine a duck quacking. You can hear that duck quacking in your head, but you're not hearing anything. Yeah. But you have the
Hmm.
experience of hearing. They're your spiritual ears, right? And your spiritual eyes, right? Your spiritual senses. They're the things you sense the world when you are in a dream. Yeah. So you're not anywhere
Yep.
physical, but you are experiencing something and you can feel things, you can hear things, you can see things, but they're not physical things. So there are two halves of you. One half is rooted in the third dimension, the other half is rooted in the fourth. So half your life, and it would be half if we didn't have all this technology, half your life is in the third dimension. When you go to sleep, you're now in the fourth dimension,
Yeah.
accessing, right? And again, remember the fourth dimension is essentially three dimensions all merged together. So in time. So the whole of this reality is an object in the fourth dimension that encompasses the whole of space and time all merged into one object, which means that in the fourth dimension, you have access to everything from the beginning of time to the end of time, right? All information, all time, space, and events,
All at once.
all at
Everything's
once.
happening at once.
Was that
There is no
film?
path.
Everything, everywhere, all at once. Yeah, and that's in your fourth dimension. So that explains things like telepathy, right? So imagine this, okay? I don't know if you can see. I drew something earlier on. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? So
Mr. Fancy Pants
Mr.
over here
Fancy
with the
Pants,
production.
yeah. So if up here is me, right, and down here is you, right? So there's me as a point, and there's you as a point, yeah. If that line represents a distance of 3 feet, I can communicate with you because we have the metaphor of language that I can make small mouth noises, right? You can hear them with your ears. You can translate the words I'm saying, and now the meaning is passed to you, right? Now, if we're 1,000 miles apart, I can't use that metaphor anymore, right? Because sound waves in this 3D universe don't travel that far. But we have another metaphor. We've got the metaphor of technology that we're using right now, that I can speak here, what the electrical signals get transferred over undersea cables.
Of course.
And going to your machine, and the sounds coming out of your machine, you can hear what I'm saying and you get the same meaning, right? If we didn't have that metaphor, it's now impossible for me to talk to you over 1,000 miles, right? On the other side of this paper is the fourth dimension, okay? All right. The thing is, though, in the fourth dimension, as I said before, you and me are connected. We're all in the same place, right? And all in this one object, okay? So, and this is out on the three-dimensional world now. In the three-dimensional world, there's a way that I can push through it using the fourth dimension, yeah? So just bypass that distance and go straight to you via the fourth dimension. Does that make sense now? Okay.
Totally.
So if we had that metaphor that, there's a way I can push through the fourth dimension, right, directly to you instantly without any time delay or whatever, right, then we have what we call telepathy. And telepathy is real, right? The way we access the fourth dimension, again, is for our right brain using what we call imagination, right? So the metaphor in the third dimension is we use technology, a phone, right? I put in a unique number that represents you, right? You pick it up and now we're connected, okay? In the fourth dimension, I can just imagine you. I could just picture you and your face and, what I feel about you when I met you, let's say, right? And now I'm connected to you. And now with that connection, I can send pictures, intentions, feelings over to you, right? And you'll get them. Whether you recognize them as such is another matter, but, that's how it works. We have this connection over the fourth dimension. And I saw this in the film, The Matrix. Yeah. So in The Matrix, right, the metaphor is when Neo and Trinity are connected, they're lying on their couches, yeah, with a spike in the back of their head, but they're in this world talking to each other, right? Well, they're using technology to do that, in the Matrix. They can easily bypass that by speaking to each other in the real world. Doesn't matter if in the Matrix they're like 1,000 miles apart. There should be a metaphor, which in the film there isn't, where they could speak to each other, while they got the spike in their head in that room, right? In fact, in the film, there is that metaphor because, the metaphor there is that Trinity and Neo are so in love that when Trinity speaks to him while he's in there, he hears it. right? Because there's that bit where she says Neo, and he gets up, and he runs, right? Because he
Hmm.
heard her, right? Can you see? It's like we can all access this other dimension, right? We've been trained not to, because most of this world is about left brain staying in the left brain, right? But with our
Yep.
imagination, we can actually jump into the third dimension and the fourth dimension. But here's the thing: time is in the fourth dimension as well. The whole of time and
Yeah.
space, yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but we have access to time and events, right? And because they're all there together, right, we can make changes, tiny changes. Right. So think of it as the whole of time and space as being a kaleidoscope. Have you used the kaleidoscope ever? Right. So
Yep. I know
the,
exactly what it looks
the
like. Yep.
kaleidoscope is like one little segment, right, of little colored beads and bits of gel and whatever, right? And it forms a pattern. And then there's an arrangement of mirrors that makes this, infinite world of pattern. Yeah. But it's based on
Hmm.
this one small pattern. So all the reflections, this infinite reflected world is 3D. Okay. You can't make changes to the pattern. You can't make changes to any of the pattern because it's just reflections. If somehow you can get into the fourth dimension, into the pattern, if you make a tiny
Yep.
change there, then the whole of reality changes.
Yeah.
So, as I said, in four dimensions,
So
you have access to whole for space and time. Sorry, you were going to say.
no, so I was gonna say, so what do you think is happening in the fourth dimension? What do you think is tinkering with reality? Do you think it's exclusively us? Do you think there's any supernatural deity behind it, God? I mean, I've come out on this. I think the creator of this realm is making the changes, in my opinion. And also another thing I wanted to ask you is you talked about the music and you getting direct messages through the music. This is something we talk about on this channel a lot. A guy, Nathan Sanders, who I have on quite often, talks about that very often, how it seems that the music is direct messages. So where do you think that's coming from?
Right. Okay. So, with your first thought, I think we are making the changes ourselves. As I said, this is something that we are supposed to naturally be able to do. Right. We would naturally be doing it if we weren't um, so ruined, right, by this system. We would be doing this all the time. Right. Um,
Hmm.
I also think that what the system has done is replicated that ability, and maybe I'll explain why in a little while. But I can give an example of us actually changing reality and time as well. Um,
Yeah, and
so
definitely, and I definitely want you to get deep into how and why you think they're mimicking the ability as well.
right,
Definitely good stuff.
so okay, most people have got the experience of manifesting a car parking space. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Right. So, and most people who've done it know that it works. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
So imagine this scenario, right? So you and me end up going to Walmart, right? Separately, we go to Walmart. Yeah. And you get there at 9 o'clock, right? And
Okay.
and right, you leave at 9:30. Okay. And at 9:30, I arrive at Walmart. Yeah. I arrive at Walmart. I look for my favorite space, and your car's in it. Right. And so I have to find another car parking space. Right.
Okay.
So there's that timeline that's already set. Okay. Now imagine now that I decide before I set out for Walmart that I want that car parking space. I want that particular car parking space, right? Um,
Yeah.
so what I think happens is because I make that request. I want that thing to happen. My
Reality
mag
gets overridden, and then like there's some other car in my way when I go to park, then they
no,
pull out after I find another
no,
spot and you
no,
pull
no,
in.
no, 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 no. It gets a little something a little more weird than that happens. That because of my request, because I want this thing to happen, right? And it's you that's in the car parking space. Let's imagine in that morning, if I hadn't asked for the car parking space, you're going to make a decision. Um, do I want a banana for breakfast or do I want cereal for breakfast? Right.
Yeah.
And you decide that you want cereal. Okay. So that
Hmm.
means you leave your house at a certain time, and that's why you end up in my car parking space before while I want it.
Hmm.
But because I've asked for that car parking space, what if the moment I ask that car parking space, you make a decision, earlier in the day, that decision gets changed, right? So that you decide to have a banana instead. So you leave the house because you finished the banana a lot quicker. You leave the house maybe half an hour earlier. You get to the Walmart
Hmm.
half an hour earlier, right? Which means you leave half an hour earlier, which means as I arrive, you pull out. So the only change that's been made is a decision that you made that has no other consequences in your life, but that decision gets changed, right? Well, it didn't get changed; it was always that way, right? Because this is a thought-based universe. All the variables are being held in a mind, and that mind, which is can make a change in the past, which isn't the past really. It's just the pattern. I'm not sure if
So what
I'm
do you think when it's not a personal one? When it's not a personal one, like a parking spot, and let's say we're talking about a reality change, like a Mandela effect, like a C3PO, right?
right.
So how do you think that we
Well, that,
change that to a specific color or something like that?
well, little change may not affect you, but it might affect somebody you meet during that time, who then because he's delayed talking to you, he doesn't. He decided not to do something, and then something gets changed, right?
Yeah.
That's just one example, but I could make a request for an experience in this world, which might reach back into your childhood, for instance. And so the ripples that are made by that change, we might detect. The reason I think that we're seeing all these massive, well, I call them massive, C3PO's leg changing is a massive one. I think the reason we're seeing this is because only Adam and his children and his offspring have this ability. But there are more than just humans here, right? There are people we call the Nephilim, who I
Hmm.
believe don't have this ability, but they're very clever, and they've figured out that they can use us to make the changes that they want. And they do that by creating these rituals that focus our mind in a particular way so that we create what they want to have happen. Right. So
Hmm.
I
Yep.
believe they've created technology that mimics the human ability to delve back into what we call the past and make changes. Um, I don't know if you came across the Project Camelot interview, somebody called Bill Wood.
I don't think I've heard that interview. What's the premise of the interview?
He's talking about Montauk and
Hmm.
Project Looking Glass. So one of these
Yeah.
several projects the American government had about delving into the past and making changes. And Project Looking Glass
Hmm.
was one of them, where they could not only see the past, but they can influence it, make a change, and then see what effect that change had on the present. Okay. Again, before I started looking at this, I had no idea that this was a thing, but it's apparently a thing. And one of the things that they meant this Bill Wood mentioned was that there was the 2012 problem that yes, they could go in and make changes to the past, but past a certain date, December 21st, 2012, it didn't matter what changes they made, right? They couldn't affect the way the timeline was going to go on forwards from that point. So
So that
um
would kind of tie into your idea that the timeline kind of split off before that, right?
yeah,
So they
well,
couldn't.
yes, I think that's what they can make changes up to that point that will change the world the way they want it to, right? But anything past that point, they can't change the inevitable, right? Which and I think what happened 2012 was the beginning of the apocalypse, the great revealing of truth, right? So that they couldn't change people waking up. Right? They can't stop this great awakening of humanity.
They can just sprinkle more bullshit on top of bullshit and try and keep people locked into their
Try and keep
fake
people
reality.
asleep. Yeah, so I believe they've created technology, and I think my view, it's the quantum computer. They've made this
Hmm.
technology which allows them to reach into the past, change a probability, right? So again, if you think of this universe as a huge equation held in an infinite mind, okay, so a huge pattern, right, that encompasses the whole of time and space, and it's all based on probabilities, right? So in the 3D world, the universe is deterministic, right? It's essentially, for instance, your personality can be reduced to numbers, right? So when it's reduced to numbers, your responses to things can be determined, right? So in the 3D world, time is already set. It's already set. It'll only go one way because in the 3D world, your responses, all of our responses are calculable, right? But when we make changes in the fourth dimension, we change the whole of reality,
So
right?
you talked about us making the changes in the fourth dimensioning and then mimicking it with their technology, but they're basically what you think is they're doing the same thing, right?
Yes,
I mean, they are doing. So
they're
if they are doing it and it is quantum computers, how is that what do you speculate is the mechanism why how a quantum computer can even tap into the fourth dimension to manipulate something like that? How are they being able to mimic exactly what we do with these computers?
okay. Well, again, if you understand that there is a fourth dimension, well,
Mhm.
you can tap in. If we can tap into it, well, they can mimic it with technology. I don't know the process they're going by to tap into it in that way, but that's what I think is actually happening. Right? They're tapping into um, okay, to get to this version of reality, right? The events leading up to it, there had to be an infinite number of probable things happen to get to this particular reality, right?
Mhm.
Uh, if we reach back um, and look at one probable event that actually crystallized into reality and then change that probability. So instead of that event happening, well, this event happened instead, right?
Mhm.
Then a new set of events end up streaming out from that particular moment in time. Okay. And that's what they're doing. They're reaching, and they say that when they talk about the quantum computer, that they reach in, and they say it about parallel universes. They reach into a parallel universe where the answer they're after is already known, and they pull that into this reality. And the guy Geordie Rose, who talks about it, he says that they're making an effect in our world, right? He doesn't say we get the answers to the calculation, we make an effect in our world. And I think the effect is that they make a change to that probability so that a different probability occurs, right? So now the timeline progresses from that point based on a different probability. So a different set of events ensue after that. So as well as us making changes, right, to our reality, which usually mean, you know, very, very small, insignificant changes. I think they're going in with, you know, with a sawn-off shotgun and making, you know, these changes. And so we're starting to see, you know, large changes, you know, like things like continents being different. You know,
So how do you think that is? So if is that them making that change, or is that us? And if it's them, like what type of, like we could see how they could change a C3PO or something maybe if they can access the fourth dimension in the fabric of time, but how would land masses be moved positions?
well, okay, so one of the things I've seen is that New Zealand used to be kind of
Yeah.
northeast, so northeast
Oh yeah.
of Australia, but now it's southeast. Okay,
It's crazy looking. Yeah.
right. But um here's the thing. I'm not sure if that's a Mandela effect. Um I think that's a artifact of my view of what the flat earth is. Have you come across Iwar Anon and his you know, lost history of flat
Yeah.
earth?
But the thing is, all the old globes and maps that you could find anywhere are gonna show New Zealand in the new position. So I don't think how does
Okay.
your view
Yeah,
of
okay, all
flat Earth?
right. Okay, so you might have me there. My theory on that might be wrong then, because I haven't seen the residue for that, right? Because I've just
Oh,
seen,
if you go and look at any old map or globe, it's going to show New Zealand where it currently is right now, which is way to the southeast instead of the northeast of Australia. And honestly, it appears that Australia has moved a little bit north as well. It's so close up to Asia now.
well,
It's
oh,
kind of
okay. Yeah, so my theory was you know, the Earth is really just a puddle that's being melted out as the sun and moon move around the greater Earth, a different puddle gets melted out. So
Mhm.
essentially, the relationship between, you know, the Antarctica and all the land masses will change as the Earth changes. If that so, but no, if you've got residue that show the original
Well,
and
it's not even the residue. We can show, yeah, we can show residue of hand drawings of maps and everything that show it the way we remember. But I'm saying the official record right now, if you go back and look at all any old global map, it's going to show it the new reality way, which is New Zealand way more south than Australia. So if it was, it's not like you're saying, like, I know what you're saying, and maybe it changed because the Earth had changed, but it's not like these things were reprojected in this current reality and New Zealand was changed. It's always been southeast now in this reality.
right.
So
Well,
how does that happen in the fourth dimension? Who do you think caused that? Do you think it was us? Do you think it was the technology mimicking us? And if so, like, how do the land masses get moved? That's kind of perplexing to me. And same thing with anything to do in our body. Obviously, it's much different than changing something that's, you know, a product or a movie or something.
well, again, I think if they've got access to the whole of time and space, you know,
Mhm.
if they've got the technology to go back to specific times and whatever, and have a look, right? Don't you think they'd use it? Don't you think they'd go
Oh, of
right
course,
back
yeah,
to the beginning of
of
the
course.
forming of this world and say, what does that look like? And what would happen if we make a change here? Yeah. So they can make a tiny
Of course.
change, and you know, it's a butterfly effect. You know, the whole of geology could change, or one part of that geology could change. Yeah, just by kicking a rock into a pool or something, right there at the beginning. Who knows? But but I really think it's if we're seeing things on that magnitude, yeah, I don't think it's us that's doing it. I think it's them and their technology. As I said, I think it's them with a, a sawn off shotgun, and we go in when we make a change. We go in and with a scalpel, and we make a tiny, precise change. But they go in with, just because they're using technology, they just go in and blast this change through our reality.
Do you get concerned though at all with the idea that maybe Gordy Rose is coming out and saying these things intentionally to misdirect us and make us think they have this ability for people like us, and it's more the same as the depths of the deception go with like the NASA program and the space programs and everything else?
Yes, they could be doing that. I said this could be um their technology could be just there to influence us, right? They've calculated how to influence us to make the change for them. I mean, again, I don't know how their technology works, but
Yeah.
it's my view that their technology does work, and what it's doing is going back and changing a probability here or there. Um, and the example I gave you with manifesting a car parking space is me going and changing a tiny probability in your life, right? That makes no difference to you, right? But changing that probability, changed reality for me, and maybe tiny other, very tiny changes in everybody else's reality, right? But they're so tiny that we don't notice them.
The messages that you felt were clear messages that you were getting through the music. Where do you think those messages were derived from?
Okay,
Who
well,
conjured up those messages?
I don't think yeah, I'm talking about the same thing you're talking about, right? In this case, I was shown something, and it just happened to be a song. Um,
Uh-huh.
and something in me recognized it, or told me it was important enough for a young guy in his 20s to um to want to memorize every word, and not only every word, the every intonation, so that I'd recognize that voice when I heard it again, um,
Okay.
and recognize it as important. So it wasn't actually the music. The music was just a transport for this information. Um, and yeah, I think we get things like that. We call it synchronicity. We get
Yeah,
information that's
exactly.
it's important to us, and we recognize it as important to us because of what it means. An example is an example I like to give. Okay, so I found some significance in eclipses. Okay, so there's a couple of eclipses. We're coming up to one significant one in April. So I decided to look at all the eclipses. So I had a web page where it listed all the eclipses throughout known history, and um, so there were hundreds of these eclipses. So I'm looking down them, and I don't know what to look for to find a significant one. And then I saw one which was on my birthday. I was
Oh
like,
wow.
okay, there was an eclipse on my birthday in 1831. Um, in fact, tomorrow's my birthday. Shouldn't really. Right.
Oh, happy 30th birthday, Dave.
Yeah, I don't celebrate birthdays, but anyway. So, um, so on February 12th, 1831, there was an eclipse across America. Okay, so I was drawn to have a look and delve into that particular eclipse, and it turns out the eclipse in that year went over a particular path across America, and it went
Mhm.
over where the Nat Turner slave rebellion happened. Okay, So it went over where that rebellion started, and it followed the path of the rebellion. So the rebellion went, the people who were rebelling sort of followed a path going towards a particular place. That place happened to be Jerusalem, a place called Jerusalem, where there was an armory. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on August 21st of that year was the rebellion. August 21st is a very particular date, and it was that date linked to what I was actually researching. So that synchronicity was there for me to see,
Yeah.
right? And it was on that date, so that date might not have been important, but maybe because I was asking for information, that eclipse happened on that date so that I could see and get that information I needed to get. I know it sounds
No, it
crazy,
doesn't sound crazy at all. I mean, so many people in this community experience these types of synchronicities. We talk about this all the time.
but that synchronicity has to be something that relates to you specifically so that you know that it's a
Mhm.
synchronicity. Otherwise, it's just, meaningless information.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we did this show today, you had reached out to me by email, maybe even just like a week ago or something, and said that you have recently taken a couple of updates and you wanted to talk about it. So why don't you describe what you meant by take updates and what that means to you? Because that's also something I talk about a lot on this channel. In fact, like we talk about the Mandela Effect update, where like you'll bring up something to somebody, ask them a question, and they'll show that they remembered the old way, but then once you tell them that something's changed, oh no, I must have just been misremembering. I've also had experiences, Dave, I'd like you to comment on, where I have seen what I consider almost like a brief possession that people go under when you're about to open their eyes to this. I had one particular example with this piano bar player. He was at the piano bar on stage playing the piano. I tried to get him to play a couple Mandela affected songs, and he ended up telling me I wasn't going to get any salvation in his church, which was really, really strange. And I think that, in my opinion, all of us, people like yourself and myself, are less prone to this type of what I deem almost like a possession, but it seems like we're constantly observed and in a timely fashion, people's consciousness or their soul, or however you want to word it, something can jump into them and kind of block them from seeing the fluidity of this realm. What do you think about that?
Okay, well, as far as the updates are concerned that I was telling you about, I've pretty much covered them because in different ways. That
Okay.
as I'm looking at this talk I was putting together, right, it started going off one way, and as I'm putting it together, this stuff came, and it's like, no, it's about this. And so yeah, I've covered a lot of what I've been, I was thinking about when I was talking to you. But if you remember, because my talk is based around the film The Matrix, right? Because there's a lot of metaphors and a lot of truth in that film beyond what most people see when they see it, when they go and see it. Again, it's about level of consciousness. So there's a bit in the film where Neo and Trinity are on top of the rooftop there, and he looks at the helicopter and says, "Can you fly that?" And she says, "I will in a minute." And she goes, "Tank, give me a helicopter program." And she's like, now she can fly a helicopter. Yeah. I
Hmm.
think that sort of thing happens all the time. Yeah.
I do too.
That we ask for things and we get a download. It might not be as instant
I've
as,
taken in information on things. I've talked about it. I've taken information on stuff in some sort of update because I know I didn't even research it.
yeah,
It just
it's
came
like
to me.
there's stuff that you don't know how you know it. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, it happened to me a lot when I was a child, right? I remember I'd have to lie about it. Okay. Somebody would ask me something and I would tell them, and I'd have to say, "Oh, it's because somebody told me the other day." That was a lie, because I didn't know how I knew what I knew. I just knew it was right. Right. So because it was a kid telling somebody this, and it was just pretty not very confident kid as well, I had to lie and say somebody else who told me. And I got it from this source, and it didn't just come from my intuition. And just think about the word intuition, inner teaching, inner tuition. It's an inner knowing, and we all have this inner knowing, because we can reach into the whole of time and space and ask it for information. And depending on how open you are to it, or what cultural and experiential context you have, that information's going to come to you. Somebody told me the other day, a while back actually, that it's like a vacuum. When you ask a question, you create a vacuum in the universe, and that vacuum has to be filled. So that answer is going to come to you. It's whether or not you see it, you recognize it for what it is, and it will try and make sure you recognize it by being a synchronicity, by being something that is specific to you, for you to take notice of. Right? But it will come to you.
100%. I think I've said this many times. I'll take intuition over so-called intelligence any day of the week.
Yeah, it's knowing. It's not believing anything. It's an inner knowing. I had an experience. I put it in my book actually. That one day I had, or one night I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had a nosebleed I had a nosebleed from hell. It was gushing out of me. I couldn't stop it. Okay. So I stuffed cotton wool up my nose, and I was thinking, well, I've just got to try and get to sleep. I'm going to work in a couple of hours, so need some sleep. So I stuffed cotton wool up there, and I put my head down on the pillow, try to get some sleep. But the moment I put my head down on the pillow, the back of my neck started to get hot. And it got hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter, until I had to just get up, and I was like, oh, what's going on? So being a child of the the technology, I went to Google, and I was like, I put in nosebleed, burning sensation, back of neck. Going through the results, and one stood out to me, and I clicked on it, and it said, to cure yourself of a nosebleed, put a cold flannel on the back of your neck. So I put the cold flannel on the back of my neck, the burning went away, the nosebleed stopped immediately. So my intuition was saying, put something cold here. But I didn't recognize it as anything, worthwhile. And, because I didn't have the consciousness level for it. And I got the message when somebody else on Google told me to put something cold there. Right. So this is real. This is something that we do all the time, but we don't recognize it, because this society tells us not to regard it.
Totally. 100%. So let's use the helicopter example, right? Dave needs to fly a helicopter, and you're going to ask the universe for the information, or whatever, however it's going to go down, where you're going to take this update. And it doesn't have to be something as extreme as all of a sudden knowing how to fly a helicopter, but let's just use that example. Who uploaded the information for you? Is it the universe was sentient? Was it somebody with a computer that uploaded it to you that reacted because they were in the fourth dimension and observed what you were asking for? Was it God? Was it Satan? Like, where do you think that information comes from when you take in those updates?
Well, we have access to the subconscious mind, right? It's not your subconscious mind or my subconscious mind. It's the subconscious mind.
So you're kind of just like reaching out and grabbing the information that's already there, ready to be
The
plucked.
information is there. Again, this universe is a universe of mind stuff. It's information, right? Held in an infinite mind. Okay. And so we have direct access to it. right? It's not conscious access as as we have in this world. We consciously want to move this glass from here to there. Yeah. So we think, okay, I want to move this glass. I will use my hand, which is a metaphor, to move it from here to there. It's just information changing. As it says in the Matrix, there is no spoon. We think, can we bend a spoon? Well, there is no spoon. It's just information about a spoon. And if we change our view of that information, then that spoon's bent. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not that it's the Most High doing it. It's we're accessing the Most High and asking for a change in the pattern. Right. And that change will come because we're asking for it.
I like it. You see, you've been talking about the fourth dimension recently in some of your talks that you've been doing. Is this kind of new for you interjecting this ideas?
Well, I think I've been on this journey, because okay, when I found out about 9/11, right, I basically asked the universe, the Most High, you know, um, I want to know the truth. What's the truth? And everything that's happened from that point onwards has been in the context of finding out what the truth is. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've stuff has been coming to me, and if you look at it, actually, if you go and look at my videos in chronological order, you can see my thought process as I'm discovering
Yeah.
stuff and talking about it. You can see how my mindset and maybe my consciousness level has been changing all throughout. So my year before last, my favorite talk to give was called Navigating the Matrix, the one you heard in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But the next one along from that was how the Most High created the universe. It's like the next piece of the puzzle was being given to me. And it's funny because I had a cannabis journey, right? Or actually the one I just mentioned to you about being pushed into this reality. Okay, so let me finish the story.
Yeah.
So I was being pushed into this reality and I was going, wow, this is amazing. Right. And I knew there was more coming on the other side of that reality. Um, so part of me was like, wow, this is amazing. But as I was going through into this new world, another part of me went, no, don't go. If you go, you're not going to come back. So it threw me out of the trip. So I kind of closed my eyes and went back into it. Excuse me. Closed my eyes and went back into it, and it threw me out again. And the third time I went into it, I was in somewhere different. I was in a conference room, and there was all
Mm-hmm.
these parts of me and the cannabis all sitting around a table. And they said, okay, he can't take all this information all at once. It's too much for him. What are we going to do? And I was like a little kid, running around the table going, I want to see though. And they weren't listening to me. They all decided that instead of giving me all this information in one go, they're going to sort of cut it up into, bite-sized manageable chunks and give it to
Yep.
me, as soon as I absorb
You're like, I'm ready. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to hear it.
yeah, Dave, I was ready to get it all at once, but obviously
Yeah.
it was too much for me. So yeah, once they decided, I was in somewhere else and I started getting the little pieces and my journey, and you can see through the videos I've been putting out, has been absorbing one chunk of this information and putting it out as a video, which is an exercise for me to understand it myself. Right, you know how it is when you start to understand something when you teach somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think it's so important and so cool that we all document us going through this amazing journey that we're on. I mean,
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. We're here to help each other. Yeah. Um, so yeah, you can see that I've been getting pieces of this information and building on it to so that um I can understand and conceptualize, this what I'm finding out. Um, Again, it's Terence McKenna. This is another one of his talks I heard the other day again, and now only now that I understand it, he calls it the process of standing more, being able to stand more when you get into that hallucinogenic trip, right? It's a
Yeah.
process of being able to stand more, not stand more in terms of dosage, but stand more in as much of as
Withstand more of an
withstand more of
acceptance of
this content
reality.
that we
Yeah.
can't assimilate. It's too much. It makes us freak out if we got too much of it. So yes, this is the process I've been on, and after um, how the Most High created the universe, the next step is this next talk, which I've entitled it "Becoming Neo." This next talk is the next step up from how the universe was created.
Do you think that the in order for us to say basically manipulate the fourth dimension, kind of like we were kind of talking about, maybe like we're causing the changes in the fourth dimension. Do you think the dreams are an access point to that for us? Is there something we should be doing in the dream state that will give us that access to the fourth dimension? Because it seemed like it goes hand in hand to me.
Actually, when you dream, yes, you do access the fourth dimension. But what you're doing when you're dreaming is you're picking out parts of your future and your past and sort of merging them together with things that you've seen in your present. And what you're getting is future and past and present, but not in a way that makes absolute sense, as it were.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
message there usually, right? But it's formed of random, maybe not random parts of your future and your past, which tells you what I think deja vu is, and some other things that we've experienced, right? That we do know what the future is. We do. We have access to it, right? But we don't have conscious access to it. But again, we can ask, and one of the technologies, right? And a lot of people have used this without knowing it. Is let's say you've lost your keys. You don't know where the hell your keys are. Okay. If you go to
Yeah.
bed and just before you go to sleep, ask yourself, okay, where are those keys? Where have I put those keys? Okay. And you go to bed thinking and pondering where those keys are. You wake up in the morning knowing where they are. Right. Because what
Why
we've
do you
done.
think, after having dreams, we have a very hard time remembering the details of the dream pretty quickly? Is that like a defense mechanism of this realm, this place, of some sort, or what do you think that is?
Well, no, you shouldn't be able to remember them at all because you're accessing a different dimension, right, with a different side of your brain. Yeah. So really, it's amazing that you've got conscious access to them in any way. So
Okay.
that's the thing. You lose it because now you're grounded in this world, and you have to be grounded in this world to operate in this world. Right. So what happens in the fourth dimension? Well, that's handled by this side. And you use a different set of faculties to work in that dimension, right? Spiritual senses and imagination. Um, so one of the things I want to do when I get back to England is I want to start something I call the DreamWorks Club. And what I want to do is teach people, and as I said, teach myself how to consciously access and consciously make our experiences happen, or the experiences we want to happen, make them happen. Um,
I like it. What about sharing dreams and pulling people into your dream? Do you think you can do that? Do you think that's a real thing? Like a
uh,
Nightmare on Elm Street part 3 type thing? where they pull each other's
I
energy.
think absolutely. I think if two people agree to do this, right, and you build a connection between yourselves and decide, okay, tonight we're going to do this, right? Um, you can absolutely do it. Again, there are barriers to stop us from doing that. Okay. One of them is not having the metaphor to do it. Yeah, not having um, a methodology to do it. Yeah. But we can easily bypass that by just saying, okay, if you understand that, in reality, every one of us is in the exact same place, which isn't actually a place or a time, but we're all together in this fourth dimensional object, right? And we can bypass 3D reality by accessing the fourth dimension, right? Both of us accessing it at the same time, right? We can bypass time and space of 3D, right? So once you've got that in your head and you believe it, now the door's open to you, right? There are also other barriers like, okay, so your imagination is much more powerful than your intent. What do I mean by that? Okay, so if I was to put a plank of wood on the floor, right, and that plank of wood was 10 feet long, but about maybe 10 inches wide, okay, and I asked you to walk across that plank, would you be able to do that without falling
Yeah,
off it? Yeah, easy, right?
yeah,
You could probably
no
hop
problem.
across or, do it with your eyes closed, yeah? But if I was to take that plank and put it up 100 foot between two buildings, yeah, and say, walk across, would you be able to do it?
Yeah, I would refuse to do it unless I had a
You
harness on.
you would refuse to do it. And if somehow your life depended on it and you had to walk across it, right, you're more likely to fall off it and die. Yeah. Because your imagination of what might happen if you do it is more powerful than your intent. Because you could do it easily if it was on the floor, right? But your imagination that
Yeah.
says you're likely to fall off will make it happen for one thing, but it will prevent you from doing it.
Yeah, if my life depended on it, though, I think I could do it across the buildings, and if it was 10 feet long, I think I would make it. I don't think my imagination would kill me, but I know what you're saying. I
Well,
have confidence, at least on that. I wouldn't do it unless my life depended on it. But if there was a gust of wind, I'd be fucked, man. I'd be gone.
I know, but you know what? Again, if there was a gust of wind and you're on the floor, it wouldn't make any difference to you. Yeah.
No.
That's a story you just told yourself. If there was a gust of
Yeah.
wind, right, you'd lose balance and
Like,
you'd fall. That's a
and
story.
likely there's gonna be a gust of wind if I'm between a couple of
There
skyscrapers. So
is.
yeah,
But if you were on the floor and you had that gust of wind, it wouldn't make any difference to you whatsoever. Okay?
no.
It's you just told yourself a story of how you would fall. And as you say, there's going to be a gust of wind and you're likely to fall because that's what you
Yeah.
believe, right? As I said, that's one of the barriers. Your imagination of what might happen, right, can stop you from having the experience. But if you can overcome that and overcome several of the other barriers that have been put in place, right, then it will happen. It'll absolutely happen. And of course, sorry, and one of the other ways you can get into the fourth dimension is using drugs. And um, one of Terence McKenna's stories is how a whole group of people on LSD found themselves in a shared space, and they were talking to each other, in this shared space. And when they came out of the
That's
trip,
cool. Yeah.
they remembered it. They all remembered that they were all there. They remember the conversation. So yes, this is a real thing. The only thing about getting there via drugs is it seems like you get to a place, a level in the fourth dimension where there are other entities. Um, Terence McKenna talks about self-replicating machine elves, as he described them. But
Yeah, I've heard about it.
but
I
other
mean, I've
people,
heard a little bit about some of the stuff that he said, even though I've never really delved too much into him.
But people take ayahuasca and they come
So I
across.
tried it. I've never tried DMT ever until like 2 years ago. Tried it. It really wasn't that for me. It wasn't that crazy. Maybe because my eyes are already pretty wide open to what this reality is. With a lot to learn, of course.
Right.
But I was kind of just felt like I was kind of having like a visual trip when things were really like a little bit weird looking and stuff. I didn't like see any, different entities or machine elves or anything like that.
Right.
I did laugh my balls off at Ted's legs. That was hilarious. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I used to call myself drug resistant Dave because nothing affected me. So so acid didn't work, salvia divinorum didn't work. I
Cannabis does, and that's like to me like that would be like the weakest thing.
Yeah,
Like that's weak.
but it was a thing that affects me. I had ayahuasca, and that's like a 6 hour journey you're on once you embark on that. Um, and what happened to me was I just skipped over 6 hours. I don't remember time passing. It was just like I felt the stuff coming on, and then the lights came up, and I was like, "What just happened?" And it was like 6 hours later. And the guy running the ceremony said, "No, no, you were interacting with some entities, and you were talking, and you were moving around the room and stuff. I have no memory of it." But the cannabis journey I mentioned to you was the explanation of why I don't remember it, because it was too much and I couldn't take it all in, so it was taken away from me. Yeah, so yeah, I think if you get there into the fourth dimension via the drug route, you're there on a different kind of level where you're at the same place as all these other entities that inhabit the fourth dimension. And there are good entities and there are not so good entities there. Um, but if you get there
So you're in
naturally,
like the rough neighborhood of the fourth dimension. You're not like really.
yes, exactly. But if you
I don't
get
want
there
to check it out.
naturally, you're in
Yeah.
the sort of good neighborhood, and you're the only one there if you want to be the only one there. But you've got full access to all information. You've got full access to connect to other people as well. Um, and I think that is the most powerful part of it. That you've got the ability to connect to other people, and you've also got the ability to make other people's lives better, right? We know that we can affect our own bodies, heal ourselves with thought, with the placebo effect, just the idea that we can heal ourselves. Okay. And again, going into the fourth dimension, that's what we do. You imagine yourself healed. And so that healing kind of coalesces into the third dimension and you're healed. But if you connect to other people, you can heal them as well. You can imagine them healed and have that happen to them, right? Or you can communicate with other people. You can do all sorts of things, right? And so essentially, you could be a hero. You could be a superhero. The real superhero is the one that does all these good things without wanting any sort of fanfare or fame and fortune. They do it quietly out of the way. You can be that superhero, and why wouldn't you be? You know, if you're a good person and you had this ability to help people, why wouldn't you do that? Yeah. Um, the world is
Yeah.
weighted against being evil. Because for the simple fact, again, using the way this world works, as soon as you start focusing on evil, well, the Most High doesn't, or the Most High, the universe, the subconscious mind, doesn't understand English. All it focuses on, or all it takes from your focus on evil, is that you want evil. So it's going to happen to you. That's what we call karma. Yeah. If you say, I want to stop war, well, your focus is on war. So you're going to get more of it, because that's what the, the subconscious thinks
That's
you're after.
that's why I think it's another reason why I think it's so important to not pay. I don't pay a lick of attention to anything they put on their media and their nonsense. It's all complete fake reality nonsense to keep your energy invested in one or the other side of picking a number of conversations that are
Sure.
about absolute fiction, you
To
know?
keep you in the fictional world, to keep you in
Yeah.
this construct they've created, right, that is maintained by you. You're
Yeah.
maintaining this, right, by believing in it, by thinking it's real. So yes, now it's real because that's what you want. Whether you consciously want it or not, remember your conscious mind is the pattern of the kaleidoscope. Yeah, you could, that pattern is you can't change it consciously. You have to dive into the fourth dimension where the pattern is, make changes to the pattern, and now the 3D reality changes.
I want to hear more about this DreamWorks thing you're going to be doing because this is pretty fascinating because I am very fascinated by dreams. I had a lucid dream once, Dave. I want to know what you think about this. I had a lucid dream where in reality, like, or whatever this thing is that's going on, right? Like, in reality, I had to be at court the next day for something, right? So it was very important that I woke up in time to go to court the next day. And I went to bed at night, and it's the middle of the night, and I'm dreaming now. Okay, it's like 2 in the morning or whatever. But in my dream, I wake up and I'm in this like mall all of a sudden that apparently had some hotel rooms attached to it. I slept in this hotel, but I was trying to find where my room was. And all this weird stuff kept happening in the dream, like people saying I didn't have a room there. And one guy walks up to me, made a comment. It was like I didn't exist or something. It was, but anyways, I kept waking myself up because in the dream, it was like I was going to be late for court. But in reality, I would wake myself up out of the dream, tell myself that, hey, it's only 2 a.m. I would look at the phone to see that it was 2 a.m. and then I would go back in the dream and I would kept jumping back out to wake up myself so I wouldn't panic like inside the dream, which was really weird. What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, you didn't need to panic like that because if you said to yourself, well, I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock, right? You would have woken up at 5 o'clock, right?
So,
Um,
but in the dream, when I'm in this mall, right, it's like I had to be at court at noon and it's already like 9 or 10 in the morning. But in reality, I'm sleeping and it's like 2 a.m. And I would wake myself up, make myself look at the phone, see the time, I was okay, I could go back to bed, and I would jump back in that same dream.
yeah,
So I was like interacting with myself both. It's
you
weird.
were just obviously you had having to get to court, right, on your mind, and you're playing out those fears, right? Um, you could have, if you if you had the training to do it, right, and the understanding you can do it, you could have affected what would happen at court. You could have sat before you went to bed, you could have imagined, visualized you going to court, you saying specific things to the court, and the whole process going the way that you want it to go. And if you adept at doing that, then what would have happened is you'd have gone to court, and exactly that would have happened.
I'll tell you, as we get better at doing this, right, it's going to be pretty fun, man, for us. I feel bad for the people that are trying to experience it. We're going to have a great time.
But
I'm
that's the
already having a
thing.
great
That's the thing, yeah.
time.
Imagine how the system knowing that this is the way the world really works, okay, having to create this dream world, right, and keep us in there, knowing that at some point we're going to wake up and realize who we are and what we can do, and there's nothing they can do about it, right? All they can do is just keep intensifying the programming, yeah, and intensifying the poisoning, right, to try
Yeah.
and stop us from waking up. And that's what's happening. They're intensifying the poisoning, intensifying the propaganda, right? They're trying to keep us in our left
I
brain
mean,
and worried and
yeah,
scared and fighting for our lives. Yeah.
And look how hard they turned the propaganda up starting 4 years ago. I mean, absolute insanity and the way people acted. Um,
But what was happening that 4 years? How many people were waking up? Yeah, just look at flat Earth. How many people from next to nobody in 2014 to millions of
yeah,
people in 2015? Yeah.
yeah,
So imagine
big
that
explosion.
on the wider scale about all these different topics. It's us breaking out of the construct that they're built for us, and they're panicking, and they've been panicking to try and get us back into it, so that
Yeah.
yeah. So I've just lined up something to show. I don't know if I can share. Oh, I can share.
Oh yeah, yeah. Share
Okay,
screen. It'll put you right up there. Yeah.
right.
Go
So
ahead.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to get. I want you to you and everybody else watching to do this little exercise. Right. I want you to focus your full attention, all of your intention onto this apple. Okay. And I'm going to time it for about 30 seconds. Right. So I want everybody to focus their attention on this apple. And here we go. Right. Were you able to focus only on the apple?
No, I was actually kind of bouncing around looking at things on the screen.
Exactly. And did you see where I said sex made you look?
No, but I saw where it said, "Why are you looking here?" And I'm like, thinking, it like, kind of fucked me up in the head for a second when I saw that.
Right. So this is part of the problem, right? We have been overstimulated in this society. Yeah. If you go walking anywhere in a city, right, there's everything's coming at you and overwhelming your senses, right? We're so overstimulated, we cannot focus. Okay. So most people, if they're looking at that apple, they've looked at the title, focus on this apple, and look, there's a bit on the side that says the word sex made you look, yeah, and there's a bit that says let's just put it up again just to
Yeah, yeah,
underline the
yeah.
point.
Bring it up.
Okay, so as you said, the bit that says why are you looking here, focus, yeah, it's because
You know what I saw though? I was like, am I supposed to be seeing something in the apple? So like right here on the screen, the shadow that's in the middle of the apple, it looked like a Jawa to me, like those little sand guys from Star Wars.
yeah. But that's good that you were focused on something on that apple, but you were focused on the apple. But most people will focus on the apple, but in their peripheral vision, they'll catch other things and their attention will switch to that. And they might and then jump back to the apple and then switch to something else and so on and so on. This is the thing. This is the problem. Yeah. It's difficult for us to focus and focus on anything for any length of time, and that was just 30 seconds, right? And I'm sure that most people in the watching would have found that a long time, that 30 seconds a long time to just stare at an apple. But that's one of the exercises that in the DreamWorks Club I'm going to get people to do: focus their attention on one thing, right? And what's likely to happen, right, if you spend an hour right, every day focusing on that apple, guess what's going to happen?
What?
What's more likely to happen is that you're going to get an apple appear in your life. Suddenly somebody's going to give you an apple, or something will happen to present an apple in front of you. If you focused enough on that apple, it's going to appear. Yeah. Could be in a metaphorical form, like somebody might give you an Apple Mac or
Yeah, 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 yeah.
whatever, an apple, because you're focused in on it. Like if you do it properly, an apple is going to appear in front of you. Yeah. So yeah, I've got a whole load of exercises and things to get people ready to, and I've got to do it myself because I haven't done it, but get ready, people
I
ready to.
think I'm probably gonna become a member of the DreamWorks Club then.
Well, hopefully I can make it a an online thing, but it means people got to spend some time, um, to be at the club meetings and then do the exercises. Yeah, and once they've done the
Yeah.
exercises, then we move on to another one and introduce new concepts and whatever. But that's the idea anyway. Hopefully, I can do it.
Yeah, yeah. So if anybody has questions in the chat for Dave, I know you guys had a lot of questions earlier. We can
If
start
not,
answering some questions.
I can tell you about the manifestations I've had that I until I start
Oh, yeah,
realizing.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I've had some amazing things that yes, I knew there were synchronicities and I knew they were, there was something odd about them, but until I started looking at this, I realized that they're impossible things. Um, like, okay, my job in America. I wanted to be a computer programmer, but the thing is, I
Mhm.
taught myself programming, right? Literally, I just taught myself, and I found that in order to get into being a computer programmer, you had to have degrees and have all this stuff and have experience and all this stuff. Yeah. So I went for to a job fair. Okay, so this job fair was for British Telecom, and there were two levels of job, right? There was one entry level, help desk, and eventually, if you work hard enough and do that, you can move up to junior programmer and so on and so on and so on, right? But there was also this managerial level programmer. Okay,
Mhm.
so I had these two jobs, and for these two job fairs on the same day, different places, right? And I looked at the managerial one, no way. I wanted it, but no way. But I looked at the entry level one, I thought, well, I can do this one, right? So I ended up going to the wrong job interview. I went to the wrong job fair. And I walked
Yeah.
in. I gave the guy my CV, which was on a floppy disk. It was a program I'd written. Right. He looked at the program, played with it, and he said, "When can you start?" And somehow I got this job that is this dream job that you know um, that there was no way I could get in 3D. Yeah. Um, I also wanted to go to America. I wanted to live in America. In 3D, I went to find out how to do that. So I went to the American embassy or something like that. I said, how can I
Yeah.
go and live in America? They said, have you got lots of money? No. Have you got a degree? No. Have you got a skill that nobody else has? No. And
Have
they
you
went,
got lots of money? That's what they said to you.
yes. Yeah. They had a
That's
whole list of criteria, and and I said no to all of them. And they said, sorry, yeah, there's no way you can come and live in America. So I was like, okay, but it was still there. I still wanted to go. But part of me said it's impossible. So I just started my dream job in British Telecom. Okay. And a year later, my manager, well, I got a job offer within British Telecom. Right, it was a promotion. Managed to jump several grades, and it was lots more money and everything like that. And my manager caught wind of it, and he said, "No, I'm going to block this. I can't have people poaching my staff, so I'm going to block it." So out of anger, I started applying for jobs outside of British Telecom, and I would put them on my desk so that my manager could see that I was doing it. Yeah. Um, so one of the jobs was a job in New York. Right now, again, I just applied for it because I just wanted to apply for anything so that my manager would get pissed off. Um, so it turns out my manager couldn't do anything to stop the promotion, and I started this wonderful job. And then a couple of weeks later, I get a letter from America saying you got the job. So, um, so I ended up going to America. They sorted out a green card and all that stuff. I ended up living in America for 15 years. Uh,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Nice.
I just want to give the last one, Impossible Girl. I manifested a girlfriend.
Yeah.
I sat and wrote down on 2 sheets of paper, right, all 4 sides, a description, a absolutely detailed description of this girl. I knew everything about her, right? Um, and then I thought, okay, that's it, that's who I want. And just about a month later, I saw her on a plane. It's like, that's her. And
Wow.
so I ended up marching up to her in the baggage hall and gave her a card and say, "Phone me, please." Yeah. Um, and she phoned me. We started going out with each other. And the weird thing is that I called her Impossible Girl. And at the same time, on my favorite show at the time, which was Doctor Who, there was a new companion on Doctor Who looked almost identical to my girlfriend, and she was called Impossible Girl.
Wow. That's crazy.
There's lots more to it, but yeah, I've got hundreds of these things that I could show you, but it was me asking for something and letting it go because I thought it was impossible, just letting it go, and then there it is. It appears in front of me.
I've been uh I've been on this roll myself for about the last 4 years, just manifesting everything I freaking wanted. It's been fantastic, man.
It
I'm
is.
telling you, from the vacations to California to the what I'm doing for work now, and I'm working as a bartender. I decided I wanted to just do this. All of a sudden, at the end of September, I decided this. In September, no, August, while I was in California, and then by September I got hired to do something I've never done, and now I like all of a sudden moved and live like on the edge of like the biggest man-made lake in the East Coast, uh, and it's like really cool, man. And I've been hitting all my other
Imagine if your
goals.
life was exactly like that. You can do.
I definitely didn't just do it. Like I definitely just did it and made it happen. But I definitely made an effort to like consciously say to myself in my head that like I'm gonna make, you know what I mean? Like what you're saying
Yeah,
in
but
this.
imagine what your life would be like if you knew from almost birth that's what you
Oh
could do.
man, I would have skipped so much bullshit, dude. Like
Yeah, but that's the point. We're here to
great.
experience what it is to live in this world, what life is like. And we have our own personal viewpoint. We have our own perspectives and personality, right? Which is unique, right? So we can have experiences that nobody else can have. We can think of experiences that we want to have that nobody else will ever think of.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's
we're
what
the
we're here to
best, man. Yeah,
do.
we're the best.
That's what we're here to
Yeah,
do, to
I love
experience
it.
it all. So, but what's happened is that, and I use this analogy that if you've ever watched Star Trek Next Generation, okay, they've got the
Yeah,
they've got the idea of this holodeck, okay, where you could go
yeah,
into this holodeck and you could tell the computer to provide any experience you want to have. I want to live in the 19th century in a Sherlock Holmes story, yeah, and the computer will create that world for you, and it will be absolutely real, yeah. Imagine if all of us had gone into the holodeck and we're playing this game in the 20th century, yeah, and some unscrupulous entity conspired to make us forget the name of the computer. So now we can't access the computer, make changes. And now we think
hmm
that now this is all real. And we have children in this place, and now they grow up into the holodeck, believing it's reality, right?
yeah,
And all the time, these entities are accessing the computer and making changes. Yeah, that's where
yeah,
we are. Except they can't make changes. They have to trick us into accessing the computer and making changes, right? Without knowing that that's what we're doing. Yeah,
yeah,
it's really
yeah.
amazing. We're in a wonderful place, you know. So anyway, sorry.
Do you think if enough of us come to the realization that we can access the fourth dimension and manipulate this reality to the way that we want, do you think eventually their whole system of all this fakery can just crumble like pretty much in an instant?
Well, first of all, right? It is crumbling because of that. And second of all, we are doing that, except we just don't know we're doing it consciously. Yeah. And
Yeah. Yeah.
this conversation, I think, is going towards getting people to realize that this is what we're doing consciously. And the funny thing is, when I started thinking along these lines, information started coming to me, especially books from, the 1800s to early 1900s. Yeah. There are loads of books from people telling us just this. This is how you access the world. Well, this is how you access the fourth dimension. All right. One guy,
And we weren't ready to hear it.
we weren't ready to hear it. But again, another funny thing is that now that I'm thinking about this, right, I'm starting to see other people thinking about this, right? As I started looking for these books, and I've got them, I've now recorded them on, they're audio books and stuff. So I'm playing them to myself all the time. Now I'm seeing more people thinking along the same lines. New videos are coming out with people saying, this is the way we access the fourth dimension. This is how we make changes in the world. A new channel popped up, started putting out videos about how you can make changes in the world and talking about exactly the same things I'm thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
So it is happening. It can't help but happen. Yeah. Everybody listening to me right now, right? If they didn't know this was a possibility, well, now their consciousness has been raised. Yeah. Again, it's not a mystical thing. It's just understanding a new concept that changes the way you look at information you've already known. Yeah. Because you're now seeing it from a different perspective, a higher perspective that gives you a richer, more rounded sort of view of that information.
So much of this journey, what I've come to realize, once you start realizing these things that have happened to this reality, it's like this is about trusting yourself over your perceived perception, your perception of what reality is based on what you've been told. And even though you might have broken many barriers of the lies, I mean, it gets deeper and deeper. The whole damn thing is a lie.
Well, think about why would you have two hemispheres of your brain? What's the point of that? What is the point of having an imagination? Yeah, because it's this stuff that's going on in your head. What's the point of that? Right? We've just been told that your imagination is insignificant. Right? When you were a child and you were stuck in a classroom, right, having your left brain programmed, right, and you were staring out the window, dreaming of flying and stuff like that, right? Well, that was reality. The stuff you were learning in school was the bullshit, right? But you were taught the other way around, right? That your imagination is nothing. It's just fanciful ideas in your head,
Yep.
right? But
Yep.
as it turns out, that's the real way to access this reality or make changes to this reality. As I said, if you don't do that, if you don't make changes to your reality, your life is on rails, essentially. Yeah. Your life is predetermined. Yeah. And everybody's life is predetermined until you go off and make a change, right? Now your life is on a different predetermined route. Right? But you can keep
It's
going
like
and
I
making
tell
changes.
people, it's like life is like a choose your own adventure book. Are you familiar with those?
Yes.
You would read a path that was set, but when you got to the end of a chapter or whatever, you would have several choices you could make that would veer you off in another way. That's the kind of way I look at life.
Right. And that's it. So you get to that end of that chapter and you've got maybe 4 choices, right? if you've been programmed into this world, you've only got one choice, really, because the other choices
Yeah.
are too ridiculous, yeah, or whatever. But you've
Yeah.
only got one choice, and that means you've got one path through that book, and that's the path that's laid out, that this system has laid out for us. But as soon as you, again, I hate using, the phrase because it's, it's got new age connotations. As soon as you raise your consciousness to accept or understand new ideas and new concepts, well, then those choices now don't seem too ridiculous.
So let me ask you this, because I speculate often about the ideas of NPCs and stuff like this, but like people that literally cannot see, no matter how many times you show that they are affected by these changes in reality, they cannot see. Do these people literally not have access to the other side of the brain? Are they only left brain? Like they just like, is it a literal thing? Can they not access that type of thought?
I believe they don't have access to that type of thought because the NPCs, I've spoken about this in other videos as well. Um, I believe the NPCs are a very particular group of people. I think they are clones or descendants of clones because over 100 years ago, there was this event where a whole load of people just came into being out of nowhere. Okay.
Hmm.
If you look at, do a search for incubator babies and start looking at that
Hmm.
rabbit hole, you'll find that, just over 100 years ago, all of a sudden there were all these hundreds of thousands of incubator babies um, that there's no explanation where they came from. And when you do a little research, you'll find that the idea of cloning came in about the same time. And those incubator babies became the orphans, right, that were
Hmm.
prevalent in the early 1900s. There were hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of orphans
Orphan
in
trains.
and
Yeah.
orphan trains moving these orphans out to in America. The orphan trains took them out to all the different towns in America. In England, the orphans were transported all
So you
throughout the
think
Commonwealth.
these are the NPCs and they bred families on top of it and there's families of NPCs?
Right. Well, think
Who
about it. There's a whole
yeah.
bunch of I found out recently there's a whole bunch of people who do not have an inner monologue. Right? They
Mhm.
don't have that sense of I-ness that you can have a conversation with right now. As you're listening to me, you might be saying, "Oh, I remember watching a video about that," or "Oh, I wonder if he means this." I've got to remember to ask it. So that conversation you're having, there are people who don't have the ability to have that conversation. Now, I believe that that is what these clones, or we call them NPCs, those clones do not have that access. They don't have that sense of I-ness that can go off and
Completely limited from it. Yeah.
yes. So um, this idea, these incubator babies, well, when they're old enough, they went into Catholic or Jesuit schools, right, which were everywhere. Okay, to be programmed about this world. Okay, into a worldview, because up until the age of 7, you have you can't analyze anything, you can't critically analyze anything, so everything you take in up until the age of 7 is your reality now. Okay, at the age of after age of 7, real humans, um, they start to critically analyze new information. So they have that voice in their heads that helps them analyze and break down new information, and they decide what to accept. What if at the age of 7, these NPCs or these clones can't now critically analyze anything? So they've been programmed into a worldview, right? And now they can't accept new information. And so when you try and talk to them about something, that's not within their worldview, it's like just you get the muggle stare.
Okay. I like this idea, man. I mean, I've known about the orphan train thing for many years now, but the idea that that was like the insertion of a whole bunch of fucking NPCs into this reality, that's deep, man. And
Well, there,
I know you also wanted to talk about the Nephilim a bit today as well too, so make sure we get to that as well.
well, that comes out of that same idea because
Yeah.
throughout all history, there's been a push to try and create the perfect Nephilim body, host body for these Nephilim spirits that are out there. And the orphan trains, the orphans, they play into that.
That's very interesting.
Unless you want me to tell you why they play into that right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Keep going.
Okay, so as I said, there's been a push to create the perfect host body for the Nephilim spirits because Book of Enoch tells you that when a Nephilim dies, their spirit can't go anywhere. So
Hmm.
they become disembodied spirits walking the earth. So there's been a push since the days of Noah to create the perfect host body, and we hear about that in myths. So one of these incarnations of host bodies were half human, half animal beings. So centaurs and minotaurs and satyrs, you know, they were created to be host bodies, but they're not perfect. So again, since those days, that agenda has been ongoing. So one example is Hitler. Hitler had a project called Lebensborn, where he was getting the blondest blue-eyed men and the blondest blue-eyed women to basically
Hmm.
mate them together to create the perfect Nephilim. Because, big surprise for some people, I guess, Nephilim were described in the Book of Enoch to be blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and very pale-skinned. So
Uh-huh.
that's what Hitler was trying to do. He was trying to breed out the human and try and get back to the Nephilim giant, the perfect Nephilim, right? So when the war ended, um, well, most people are familiar with Operation Paperclip, where the
Yeah.
Americans took thousands of Nazi scientists. But at the same time, the Russians did the same thing. It was
Yeah, I
Operation,
was just gonna say that Russia did
yeah,
it as well.
or Operation Asayaverhim or something like that. And they took thousands of Nazi scientists. Now, I believe the Nazi scientists they took were the Lebensborn ones, the geneticists, okay, the eugenicists, right? So, where do you think the Nazi scientists went in Russia? Where do you think they went?
Um, I'm not sure.
Well, you'd recognize it. It's
I
Ukraine.
would. Okay.
These Nazi scientists went to Ukraine, which is why you keep hearing about neo-Nazis in Ukraine. They're not neo-Nazis, they're the actual Nazis, because that's where they went. Okay. And I believe they carried on the the effort to build the perfect Nephilim host body. Yeah. So um I believe in Ukraine, the same process was going on, creating these host bodies. Um, and
Is the main goal to put all these NPCs out there just one more attempt at keeping people locked into this fake presented reality?
Well,
Is
yes,
that
that's one of the
basically
purposes of the
the main goal?
NPCs. Monkey see, monkey do. If the
Yeah.
masses do this one thing, well, maybe they'll take a few of us with them. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
idea. Um,
Yeah.
but the Nephilim part is that they've been creating these host bodies and they've been perfecting it over the years. Um, and if you look in if you look in America, well, there are no orphanages anymore. There, turn of the century, there were hundreds and hundreds of orphanages in America, but now there's none. There's no orphanages in Canada, the UK, Australia, anywhere like that. No orphanages. But there is one place where I found over 750 orphanages. Do you want to guess where that is?
Where is that?
Ukraine.
Wow.
right? So there was an
So they're making it. There's like an NPC factory in Ukraine by these Nazi
I know these
scientists,
are
and
specialized NPCs. These are specialized NPCs. These are Nephilim NPCs, empty vessels, but Nephilim bodies, right? Um, there is okay, let's step back again. There was a second narrative going on during the Iraq War. Okay, when America
Mhm.
went into Iraq, there was a second narrative going on, and that was um, the soldiers
Taking the
were
ancient artifacts, or them seeing
ancient
the
artifacts. Yes, okay,
yeah.
and during that time, there was a story that came out very quickly and then disappeared. That they found Nimrod's tomb, or they called him
Mhm.
Gilgamesh, but Gilgamesh Nimrod's tomb. Yeah, this Nephilim giant. Okay, if you read in the KJV about Nimrod, it says he became a mighty man. So the inference is that he was a normal guy, and then suddenly he became a mighty man. Right?
Mhm.
If you look at the same passage in the Septuagint, it says he became a giant, again inferring that he was a normal sized guy, and then suddenly he became a giant. And you can see pictures, or you can see a relief of Nimrod slash Gilgamesh holding a lion, yeah, as like it was a kitty cat, yeah. So he was about
Yeah.
12 to 18 feet tall. So this news story that came out of the Iraq War in 2003 was that they found Nimrod's tomb, and they got Nimrod's DNA. Now, let's put this together. Well, there's an undeniable connection between Ukraine and America, especially the American intelligence services.
Mhm.
So I think Nimrod's DNA was incorporated into these Nephilim bodies. Okay, waiting for a signal, perhaps some kind of electromagnetic signal from, I don't know, maybe a 5G network that's all over the earth now, to trigger these Nephilim bodies to become giants. Just an idea, yeah. But
Yeah.
here's the other thing. Underneath the Ukraine war has been a second narrative. Can you guess what that second narrative is?
I don't know. What is it?
Ukrainian orphans needing homes in the West. So ever since this Ukrainian war, there have been
You're right. Yeah, you're
millions
right.
of orphans, Ukrainian orphans, being spread out all over the world. In every country, there are now Ukrainian orphans. What if
Holy shit.
What if there's a signal from a 5G network to trigger these orphans once these Nephilim spirits are allowed into this world? And I think that's what CERN is there for, right? CERN rips a hole into from this reality into that level of the fourth dimension where these spirits are. These spirits can come directly in, and they have host bodies waiting for them all over the world.
Jesus Christ, man. But what do you think? So these are next level NPCs. These are Nephilim spirit NPCs we're talking about here.
They're empty
What are they gonna
vessels.
what are they gonna act like? Are they gonna just be like the other ones, where they're just trying to,
No,
keep us grounded in
you've got
reality, or what's gonna happen?
you've got the basic NPCs, yeah, that were created, 100 years ago, right? And the thing is, if an NPC, Matt sort of procreates with a human, there's a 50-50 chance that they're NPC or human, yeah. Um, and I'm pretty sure I've had a very close relationship with an NPC, right? And
Oh, can we talk about it? You don't have to use names. I mean, this is interesting.
okay, so yeah, I was in a relationship with this NPC, right? I'm pretty sure of it now. Um, so I first started realizing it when I got the idea in my head that I don't remember her ever saying "I love you" without the word "to" at the end. I went through my memory. I was like, had she ever said that? And I realized no, she's never said that. So as an experiment, I decided to stop saying it and see what happened, see if she'd take up the slack. And the result was we never said it again. So I'm a very tactile person. So when I was with her, whenever I was with her, I'd always be in physical contact with her. So if I'm in a room with her, I'd be holding her hand or my arm around her, or if I was driving, I'd have my hand in her lap while I was driving. I'd be in physical contact with her. So I thought, hang on, is it just me who's reaching out for her, or does she reach out for me as well? So I stopped, as an experiment, I stopped reaching out. And the result was we never touched anymore. So I realized that this whole relationship we had was just half a relationship. It was me putting into the relationship and having it mirrored back to me. And I thought it's like going into a room,
It was
peeking
only
into,
only reactions. All it was reactions to what you were doing.
exactly, right? It's like going into a room and glancing into the room and thinking, "Oh, what a huge room," and then realizing one wall's a mirror, and you realize, "Oh no, it's only half a room. It's only half the room I thought it was." So it was like being a couple on a tandem bicycle. Yeah, and you're riding around, seeing all these things and having all these experiences, and then looking around and realizing that you're the only one pedaling. So when you stop pedaling, you don't go anywhere.
So do you think you got in that relationship just by chance and it could have been any NPC and there's so many of them out there and you realize what happened? Or do you think like somebody put that NPC up to like wasting your time?
I've said this before to people, and they've taken offense to this, but when you realize what the Nephilim looked like, okay, they would look very alien to the humans that were already here. Okay. So the NPCs, the Nephilim were blonde-haired, blue-eyed, very pale, very tall people. Yeah. In 1751, Benjamin Franklin wrote an essay, and he described the whole world. He described the people in the world, right? He said that most of the world is black. Most of the world, people, all of Europe is black. All of Asia is black and tawny. He said the only white people in the world, and by that he meant his, Nephilim bloodline. He said the only white
Yeah.
people in the world are in Saxony in Germany. They're in England, and the newcomers that are in America. He said 1751, there's only those few white people in the entire world. Okay. After the orphans that appeared out of nowhere, right, there were millions all over the world. And as I said, they came about because these NPCs, these cloned beings, were being moved out across the entire world. And less than 100 years later, right, now you've got millions of white people, right? Now, again, not all of them are clones. Some of them are descendants of clones, right? That's what I believe has happened. So it's not a racist thing. It's literally they put a lot of these people out to basically be like I call them Judas goats. Have you heard of a Judas goat?
Mm-hmm.
So the Judas goat will lead the flocks of sheep into the abattoir because, monkey see, monkey do. And so
Yeah.
you've got
So it makes
those.
sense if say you had, only 5% of the population question this reality. We'll say that goes up to 10%. Well, time to insert some more NPCs, right? Bring that percentage back down.
Right.
Again,
So,
it keeps going.
and if those NPCs are absolutely compliant, which the muggles are, yeah,
Oh, they
Then
love it. I mean, look at them suffocating themselves over the last few years. I
yeah,
mean,
but
God.
but but the point is they can't assimilate new information. They've been programmed
No.
into the worldview of obey authority. That's what school's all
Yeah.
about. Teach you to obey authority. So if authority says you've got to wear a mask, they're gonna jump through all their hoops to wear a mask. They're gonna wear four masks. They put four masks,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
They can't
It's
help it
crazy.
because they've been programmed to obey authority, right? But then the way DNA works, right? Children of NPCs and humans, well, some of them are going to have the human capacity, right? So amongst NPC families, you'll have one, right, black sheep of the family who doesn't go along with where you have that in virtually all families, right? It's the way DNA works. You have one who won't go along with it. Yeah. And as I said, the way DNA works, it might be your grandfather or great grandfather was a human, right? So that human DNA will pop up every now and again to be that black sheep of the family who doesn't go along with things. They're the rebel. It. I know. I'm making
I
some of
want.
this.
Hey, I'm thinking I'm gonna trace my dad's roots, and it's gonna come back that he came from freaking orphan train.
Well, again, it's not a racist type thing because
No, it's not
who
racist.
knows,
It's just like how I could show him all the stuff I did about 9/11, and his only response to me be, "Don't ever talk about this again."
right?
Or, and then when the thing went down in Connecticut with the school kids, which I'm not even going to mention, that was it. That's when he like publicly disowned me and told me how ashamed he was to be my father.
Well,
Like,
well,
totally.
look at how it works in a computer game. Yeah. When you play in one of those online games where some of the players, are actual people on the other side of the screen, but they're also bots, that are computer generated that walk around to fill up space, basically. But if you try and speak to one of the bots, they have a programmed response. They can't respond to you in any other way than they've been programmed, right? They can't assimilate new information and respond to that. They just respond for what they've been programmed. So that's what we see in the world today, right? People that will not be able to accept this new information about the jab that won't be mentioned.
Yep. I almost feel like some of it is so over the top, like with these people they put in front of the camera that make complete clowns of themselves pushing that narrative. That it's like almost like these people presenting the fake reality are trying to flex their muscle at us and be like, look how we have these people, look how stupid we make it, and they still believe it. I feel like that.
Yeah, I know, but that's I don't think that's what's happening, right? I think it's always been like that, right? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're
without
noticing.
using that new age connotation,
Yeah,
our
yeah, yeah.
consciousness has raised so we can see it as ridiculous. Yeah. But with these NPCs, you can't raise their consciousness. You can't get them to accept new concepts so they can understand that it's ridiculous.
It's so weird, man. I mean, you didn't hear an ambulance siren for 18 months, and these people think that people are being carted around and don't even have a place to stick them because there's so many bodies. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, but once, and I think I credit the
That TV is a big thing, man. That TV is that's such a weapon that completely gives people a fake reality and they believe it, all of it.
right. Well, you know what, the ones behind the bloodlines that we're talking about, right? Again, it's spiritual. It's these angels. It's these fallen angels. They hate all of us. They hate even their children. They hate all of us. Yeah, they want to get rid of all of us. They're the ones who gave us technology. If you look at the Book of Enoch, it tells you, that they gave us technologies. They told us how to make war. Told us how to make money. How what money was actually. They told us about makeup. They told us about all sorts of things. Yeah. They're still giving us technology, or not us, they're giving their bloodlines technology, right? Um, if you saw the film Contact, yeah, with Jodie Foster, right, where the aliens gave them plans to build a machine, the most expensive
Uh-huh.
machine in human history. Well, they're just
Yeah.
telling you the story of what's happened here.
Mhm.
These fallen angels gave their people the plans to build the most expensive machine in human history for their purposes, right? Which is CERN. Yeah. So, it wasn't created to find the Higgs boson. Yeah. If that's
No,
the
no.
truth, then they found that back in
Particle.
2012, right? But they've told you what the purpose of it is, to rip a hole in our reality, and so it's create a portal to another reality. They've told us.
Mhm.
So yeah, they've been giving technology to their bloodline, ever since they were released. Right. The Old Testament tells that they would be imprisoned for 70 generations. Now, depending on how long you think a generation is, but depending on whose numbers you look at, the fallen angels would have been released somewhere between the 1700s and the 1900s, the early 1900s, which is just the time when we started going from horse and cart to rocket ships, in one
Mhm.
lifetime. So no, that doesn't happen. If you can go, 6,000 years with no technological advancement, and then suddenly, right, you go from one thing to a quantum leap
Nice.
above.
Yeah.
No,
You
we
got
were getting
planes in the
help.
sky.
We're getting
Yeah.
help.
But we
All
all know
we.
that the rockets weren't really going anywhere
No, no.
significant. Uh, yeah,
But the idea
of
of
course.
them, yeah, and the idea of all this
So,
technology.
but some of the other technologies all coming along, and like airplanes. You know, that's one that's huge. Television,
Yep.
all this.
And television was never meant for our entertainment. Never. It was always meant to affect our minds, change our reality.
Absolutely, that was the pure intention of it.
Yeah.
I mean, the news is just so toxic for the mind. It's like, wow, I can't imagine that people sit there all day and watch that. And I did at one time, not all day, but believe that the news was like this absolutely real representation of reality. And now we know it's just a big energy harvest to keep you tied into all the bullshit and make you believe as much of it as possible.
Yeah, but
You
all
know?
of it, every part of, everything that's on that television is there to alter your mindset, you know.
Keep you in fear, bro. The
Yeah,
fear is the big thing.
go
Fear is their
back,
big fear and division.
go back and look at some of the cartoons you watched when you were a child. Yeah. Preferably something you haven't seen since you were a child. And you're gonna spot things in those cartoons, you know. Think about Tom and Jerry. Think of the level of violence in Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
Think of the effect that level of violence would have on a child.
Hmm.
Yeah, a child who doesn't know that, if you're thrown off a cliff and splat down on the ground, you're not going to jump up and walk away. Yeah, right. That child's mindset has been shaped through watching those cartoons. Yeah, to be more violent, to be hateful, to be confrontational, your mind's been shaped by this machine, this infernal machine. And also think about
Don't worry.
how your life has changed since you stopped watching it.
Oh my God. I mean, my it's been 13 years, 14 years. And my life is fantastic. So much better than everything. Even the intro music to those news shows is like dun-na-na, dun-na-na, dun-na-na. Then they're like, this many people died here, this many people gonna die here. Ba, 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 ba. people still buy in. People still think politicians are gonna save them, and it's like, oh my god, I can't even imagine being so tied into this nonsense that they promote.
More than you realize, because even language is doing it, right? Language, these languages we're speaking, um, their their only purpose, real purpose, is to create thought, right? Even the linguists will tell you that the English language is more about creating thought than passing meaning from one person to another. I think it's Noam Chomsky who said that everywhere where a language could sacrifice um, you know creating a thought in somebody's mind in favor of making a meaning more clear, it always sides on the side of creating thought, right? Because that's its primary focus, not passing meaning. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
this language is structured so that when we use it, we create mostly the opposite thought to what we're trying to convey. That's the way this language has
It
been built.
must be so. It must be so crazy for the people that are sitting back and watching us being manipulated into manifesting the reality in the way that they want us to do it for them. You know,
Well, you know
it's like a
that
deep.
you know that craziness. You've experienced it.
Well, yeah. Oh, I know what's going on.
Because we're standing again from again. Every time I say it, I hear myself saying it from the New Age point of view. But from a raised consciousness point of view, you can look back at the Muggles and go, "That's ridiculous. Why can't they see what we see?" You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a great show so far, Dave. We can go in 3 hours. I can still go a little longer. It's fine. It's a lot of people here today, so you guys rock. And if you guys have any questions for Dave, we can get into it. One question I saw earlier, somebody asked what part of the UK you're in, but you're actually in the Caribbean right now, right, Dave?
I'm in St. Lucia at the moment.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. So if anybody has questions for Dave in the chat, Dave, I want to ask you, like, as far as like the Mandela effect, like, do you have a certain like when you try to bring the conversation up to somebody, a certain like one that you bring up? Is it like that you like to bring up to people?
Well, it's always going to be C3PO because that's the one that got me. But the next two are Snow White, obviously, because everybody
Hmm.
remembers Snow White. And
Yeah.
I always like to bring up the James Bond one with Jaws,
Yeah. That's a
because
huge one.
it is a huge one, because the whole point of that girl, that little blonde girl, and that whole scene was for that joke, for that one joke, because
Mhm.
when do you follow the backstory of a Bond henchman? You don't. Jaws was just a Bond
Yeah.
henchman, yeah. But they
Yeah.
gave him that
Yeah.
tiny bit of a backstory, yeah, of falling in love with that girl just for that one joke. And if you think, well, no, well, they just wanted to round him out a bit or give him some. Well, why wouldn't you make it that joke right there? Why wouldn't you
Yeah.
make a joke? Because that's what James Bond in the Roger Moore era was all about. He was making jokes all the time. Yeah. If if you were going to put that scene in there, why wouldn't you make that joke about braces? Right? It's almost an obvious joke to make. So the fact it's not there, and there's now no point in having that scene in there anyway, so it means that something's changed. That's a big one for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one, and it's interesting too because there's a lot of people that will definitely admit that they knew that Dolly had braces, and they'll like die on that hill, but then they still won't look any further into the topic. That's like their spot where they stop. I call them the Dolly's braces crowd. I swear, it's really weird because almost nobody will actually deny it and say, "Oh no, I always remember she'd never had braces." I don't really hear people say that. People will say, "Well, I know that she had braces," but then they won't go any further. And it's like you really need to look further at this because it's starting to open your mind up to again what you're calling the fourth dimension.
Right, but you know, just like I did, I parked it on a shelf. You know, because I saw a couple,
Hmm.
but okay. What this is a flat earth answer. You know, I still got to go to work on Monday, you know. What difference does it make
Yeah,
to me? Yeah, yes,
yeah,
it's all gee whiz, but so what? You know.
yeah,
So I think a lot of those sort of people fall into that category as well. Um,
yeah, yeah,
but it usually takes something that really gets them to want to go and look a bit further into it.
yeah. Ed McMahon, I know you might not be familiar with him because they
I
didn't
know.
have him in the UK, but I'm sure you've heard the story. Um, Him never working for Publishers Clearinghouse and delivering giant checks to people's doors is like such a gigantic Mandela effect. It's
Mhm.
so blatantly obvious. There's
I
even a
remember
rap
it.
video.
I remember it.
Yeah,
I was in there. I was there for 15 years. So
that's right.
I remember seeing the big giant check and everything. Right. And I was shocked when,
Yeah.
you know, he wasn't going door to door. He never done that. Oh,
Yeah, so and it's interesting too because like I'll definitely make sure I don't lead people in any way when I approach them on the street, and I ask them these things all the time, you know, and I'll ask people, "You familiar with Ed McMahon?" They're like, "Yeah." I say when I say Ed McMahon, what picture pops in your head? They'll be like, "Oh, Publishers Clearinghouse, him going to people's doors with giant checks and balloons." They'll go in this whole description of something that's never existed, and I didn't tell them about it. You know what I mean? Like. He's from my hometown too,
oh,
which is crazy because there's so many Mandela effects in my hometown, including the neighborhood I came from and the river that runs through. The city is spelled differently now.
here's another idea that might be a bit freaky. What if it's you that's doing it?
Oh yeah, it could be.
I'm saying if you are focused on the Mandela effect, yeah, you are
Yeah.
focused on it, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What if you are doing it because of your focus on it? And you know, it popped into my head that you're doing it because you just said, well, there's a lot happening in my hometown about them. What if
Oh, so
you
this is all my fault. So it is all my fault.
I'm
Shit.
well, I'm saying, you know, I think it happens anyway, but I think you are making some of this happen. Perhaps some of the more
Yeah.
ridiculous ones you are making happen so that it does look ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I've been saying, that's a distinct possibility that you are creating these things, right? So that you can see that it's real.
Yeah, it could be. I do talk about it a shit ton. So.
Well, no, you don't just talk about it, you're focused on it. Okay.
Oh yeah.
The
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
subconscious mind
Absolutely.
does not speak English, right? Doesn't speak German or French. What it speaks in is in intention, focus, visualization. Yeah. So you're focus on it, you're bringing it out.
Could be. Definitely could be. Okay, what do you think about some of the like song changes that seem to have intentional messages in them, like that of Mandela effects? It's like C3PO's asking, how can you unintentionally put clear messages in something like "Who will save your souls"? So there's a famous song by Jewel, "Who will save your soul." Now it says, "Who will save your souls." There's the mamas and the papas says used to say, "Get down on my knees," and I began to pray. Now it says, "Get down on my knees," and I pretend to pray. So it seems like there's some messages in some of these Mandela effects. What do you think about that? Would that be them trying to mimic what we can do and them having some mockery behind it? Are we inadvertently? How could we? Because we couldn't inadvertently put a message in a song, right? With the change.
Sure, we could. Sure, we could.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
as I just said to you, that maybe you're causing some of these Mandela effects because of your focus on them. Yeah. Um, because you know, we don't realize how much power we have in this world, right? We think we're just little old me who, you know, can only do very so much. What can one man do? You know, that sort of thing. Okay. Point is, you have way more power than you can even imagine. You can not only shape your body and have your body healed of things, but you can create effects out in the world to have the experience that you want to have. You can affect the world, right? When I said about uh, changing the pattern in the kaleidoscope, right? That's your power.
Hmm.
You can go into the fourth dimension, change that pattern just slightly, but the whole pattern changes because of that little change you make. Yeah. So some of these things, I don't doubt, are us trying to send us ourselves a message. Yeah.
Hmm.
Because how a lot of this works, it seems, it works in the uncertainty, the probabilities. Yeah. Just as I explained with the parking space thing. Yeah, whenever you make a tiny decision in your life or any decision in your life, there's a period of uncertainty until you choose. And now that uncertainty collapses into a reality. Yeah. Well, those periods of uncertainty for everyone's life can be manipulated, um, can be changed by ourselves, by the subconscious, which we all have an access to. Right. So a probability can change somewhere, and that will lead to the events that we want to have. Right. So we're doing this naturally, even and these days it's unconsciously, right? Um, at some one point, we knew how to do it consciously. We don't anymore. We just sort of stumble over it, you know, unconsciously. But I believe we're starting to learn how to do it consciously again. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that we are doing some of these ourselves. Yeah, so that you know, as a message to ourselves to wake up.
Cool. Cool. Thank you. That was good. I saw a couple other questions in chat. Somebody wrote, where is it? Does Dave have content on how to heal specifically?
um, not in this kind of mode of thought. Yeah. I've got quite a few videos about how to heal yourself. Um, there's a video called Body Centric Health. Right, it's just a different way of looking at healing. And yes,
Hmm.
it does encompass some of this, but from from a different level of consciousness. Yeah, it's me understanding that all disease starts here, but you know, I didn't really go in too far into that. But yeah, you can. There's lots of videos on how to heal yourself with nothing, without using you know the medical system, um, or even having to go out and buy anything. Right? You've got everything you need to heal yourself with you. And yes, it might be a metaphor, right? But if it works, it's a good metaphor. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And what's your book that you have on Amazon? What's that about?
It's called the Human Body Owner's Workshop Manual. So it is about how the human body works, but it's also, again, this is part of my journey. It's also about how you can uh, affect the world around you, um, but not again, not to the level of consciousness that I'm at this point. So yeah, it's about how to operate your body in this world.
Awesome. Awesome. I am getting a bit hungry. So we'll probably start to wind it down soon, if that's good with
Absolutely,
you.
whenever you want.
But we need to do this again, and not make it 4 years apart. So you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Scott Level Realm writes, Brian, can you ask him if his son still has a channel on YouTube? He used to do a really good show back in the day.
Yeah, my son sort of stepped back from making videos and stuff. Um, he's a he's a battle rapper. Okay. Um, so I don't know if you've come across
Nice.
battle rap. Yeah.
Mm.
Two guys
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
two guys stand across from each other and fight with words, basically. So it's really
Yeah.
good. But when he came out as a truther and a flat earther, right, obviously, all the battles he had were just ripping into him about, you know, about being a truther and a flat earther and about what his dad gets up to and stuff. Yeah. So he decided to concentrate more on what he was doing. So yeah, he stepped back from doing that. So yeah, he's more focused on other
I
areas now.
and I am not one bit surprised that your offspring is a battle rapper. I really got to compliment you, man. You're one of my favorite people to see speak like out in public and in the street and talking to people. So
Oh, thank you very
definitely,
much.
yeah. What do you got coming up? Anything you want to promote? You got coming up? You got any speaking dates coming up? You want to talk about, or any projects that people should know about?
Right. Well, I've got a tour, speaking tour going on. Um, so I'm just actually trying to figure out the dates for that now. Um, and I did think about extending it to America, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Oh,
Um,
that'd be great.
yeah, so
That'd
if
be
anyone in
awesome.
America wants me to come speak, just give me a shout. So there is a project that I'm doing as well, which is I'm standing as a leader of the United Kingdom. Um,
I
just
like it,
base
dude.
just basically to show people that there's an alternative to this pantomime of supposedly electing these puppets. um that we don't need a government. We need to rethink what we're doing. Yeah, these governments aren't here for us. They're just they're essentially just mouthpieces for the agenda, and we don't need to go along with it. Yeah, we have the power to make a society and a life that is worth living in and worth thriving in. Rather than be stuck in this system that's anti-human. It's not built for humans to thrive in. It's built to essentially drive you to suicide. But so yeah, I'm just trying to give people an alternative view, even if I don't make it as leader. At the very least, I want other people to see the world differently.
Even if you don't become the leader of the UK, you're going to be a dream warrior, and you're going to be teaching people how to do it. So
Yeah,
get that going. That's going to be great. All right, everyone. I'm going to get out of here. Dave's links are below the video on all the platforms. This was live on YouTube, Rockfin, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and D Live. It'll be uploaded to Odyssey and BitChute. Search Allegedly Dave on all the platforms that he mentioned. Would you say Rumble, Odyssey, and
Rumble,
BitChute?
Odyssey,
Is
and
that what you
BitChute.
say?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Allegedly Dave on all the platforms. And I will see you guys either Wednesday night. If not Wednesday, I'll see you next weekend. Thanks everybody for being here.
Well,
Awesome.
cool.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye.